With the wrestling mainstream consolidated under a single company, only one man dared to challenge the status quo.
I had the balls to step out at a time that I was young. Some people called me stupid, naive, idiot.
I've always called Jeff a carny with a heart of gold.
Jeff Jarrett can sell you the glasses off your own face.
Jeff Jarrett was the only person who could have pulled off doing a company in opposition to Vince McMahon.
They said, don't do it, don't do it. And I didn't listen to any of them.
Let's get it on right now!
It's time for total non-stop action!
Jeff Jarrett's promotion disrupted the wrestling landscape and rewrote the rule book.
I wanted to create a brand of wrestling that was different.
Jeff built this new revolution in sports entertainment, in professional wrestling, and it's pissing off Vince, but there's nothing he can do about it.
We all had something to prove.
The story of TNA is so important in the history of pro wrestling. TNA was the underdog, it was the beacon of hope.
And then the whole thing went to shit.
As the foundation began to crack, a bitter power struggle erupted behind the scenes.
Dixie Carter, she divided and she conquered.
You want to bring in Hulk Hogan? Do I think it's going to work? Hell no.
At the end of the day, there needs to be somebody who has control or power.
Jeff had all the backstabbers backstabbing the backstabbers. It just got crazy. It was just one big, shit show.
Jeff wasn't screwing Kurt's wife. Jeff didn't take Kurt's wife. It was a storyline.
I expect you to support me 100%.
It was embarrassing for everybody involved.
Shut up!
It's a hot mess. How do we survive this?
Wrestling is or be.
I never gave a second thought that a big power play was coming.
Through triumph and turmoil, the company's journey mirrored that of its founder.
I felt sorry for him. He was so broken.
My drinking went from bad to worse. It was drink and get drunk and then blackout drunk. I was out of my mind, and I wouldn't go to the hospital.
He was killing himself.
It was clear that this was a different Jeff Jarrett than I had known and worked with for years.
Through it all, one inescapable truth emerged.
The story of TNA is the story of Jeff Jarrett because TNA is Jeff Jarrett.
It's a story of perseverance. There's tons of lessons you can learn from Jeff Jarrett.
Whether you are a success or whether you are a failure, it all starts with the person on top.
I get emotional thinking about some of the things that I've survived, but I think you can roll over and play dead and die a slow death, or you can get up and fight like hell. Trying to think how to start this. The TNA story, I have a completely different set of lenses on it today than I did back in 2002. At the end of the day, when I kind of look back on my career, there's no way to succeed in life if you don't have not one failure, but many.
The story of TNA is the story of 1,000 what-ifs.
I look back on those early days at the core nucleus and the timing. In a lot of ways, it's a dream that I don't ever want to wake up from.
TNA wrestling from the very beginning was insane. It really had that feeling of, oh my God, anything can happen.
It's a 2-pound bag of sugar.
Always crazy, always over the top, always chaos.
The cages, the girls, it was a spectacle.
I feel dirty, and I feel dirty in a way that no shower will ever make me clean.
If you are a traditional wrestling fan, this show is not for you.
Ah, there goes the printer! What's he doing? Oh my God!
You had your core of young talent growing up, and you had stars coming in. It was a very exciting time.
Eric Bischoff, Hulk Hogan, Jeff Hardy,
Booker T, Kevin Nash, and myself.
The big bad booty daddy!
AJ Styles, Samoa Joe.
We get Sting, and now we have arguably the best wrestler in the entire world in his prime, Kurt Angle.
The Olympic gold medalist, president of the crowd!
Jeff's story and TNA's story are inextricably linked. He was the driving force.
Do I feel validated? Do I feel right of where I'm at today? That is a deep question. I was given one of the greatest gifts, and that is the gift of desperation. And that gift of desperation has changed my life. I'm Jeff Jarrett. I've been in the professional wrestling industry for 40 years, and I founded TNA Wrestling. One thing's for sure, I'm a lifer in this business.
Whoa! And with a tight style, Jarrett added something to it.
I idolized my father.
Oh my gosh, Jerry Jarrett!
The wrestling world knew Jerry Jarrett as kind of the boy next door, blonde hair, blue eye, good looks, but behind the scenes, he was the boss, the promoter.
We've been working very hard to try to cut corners and cut prices and still maintain the quality talent.
My parents divorced when I was 3 years of age. My mother blamed the wrestling business on splitting up the family. I lived with my mom, so I didn't see a lot of my dad. He was this wrestler that I saw on TV from time to time.
All right, what's a scorpion dime?
Preteen and then into my teenage years. I started spending summers with my dad. His office was right next to my bedroom, and I saw wrestlers come by the house and pick up paychecks, and there was these 3/4-inch tapes that I could watch matches, and I think it gave me a set point on how I viewed the business, that it's all storytelling, it's all theatrics, it's all larger than life. Jerry Jarrett was a unique character, so to speak, and also the son of another legendary figure, his mother, Teenie Jarrett.
Jeff's grandmother was the most successful female promoter in the entire wrestling industry. I'm Jim Cornette. I've been in the wrestling industry for 50 years, and I got my first job from the Jarrett family. Jeff, throughout his entire life, his family, everything that they had came from pro wrestling, and it was treated very seriously by them.
I was a young teenager, and my grandmother called, and she said, the folks that run my concessions up in Kentucky, you're not going to be there, so you're doing concessions, and I'm going to pay you. And then one night, I made over $300, and I said, I like this business. I like it a lot.
This match, one fall, 15-minute time limit. Jeff Jarrett is the referee.
My dad wanted me to get an education in the industry, setting up the ring, marketing, wrestling, refereeing.
Now Landell and Dundee are showing.
My freshman year of college, I was a referee, and Bill Dundee and Nature Boy Buddy Landell came out and beat me up and roughhoused me, and my dad came out and he got involved.
Jerry Jarrett just said, and he nailed Dundee.
Our plan was for me to go back to school in the fall, but I never went back.
Nice move by Jeff Jarrett.
Wrestling has been my whole life. It's something that I hope that my children would go into as Jeff has.
It didn't hurt that Jeff was a great athlete, and he was a great in-ring performer, and he had the psychology, and he could talk.
The definition of luck is when preparation meets opportunity.
Right.
And Monday night.
Young, good-looking, sells his ass off.
Jarrett, what a move he put on him, and a good drop kick and basher.
Jeff was a territory star, and when he got his opportunity to go to WWF, I think that was probably a real opportunity to branch out and be something other than Jerry Jarrett's son in Jerry Jarrett's company. My name's Scott D'Amore. I've been in the wrestling business for over 30 years. Double J Jeff Jarrett was a country music superstar.
Double J Jeff Jarrett.
You know, probably not the character that you ever look at and go, oh, wow, that's our future world champion.
And they had done these vignettes with him to introduce the character, which I thought were brilliant because they were cheesy. But at the end, he goes, it's J-E-double-F, J-A-double-R-E-double-T. That's Double J, Jeff Jarrett. Smile, twinkle, sound effect, super cheese. I am David Sahadi, and I've been in the wrestling business for over 30 years. Jeff has great talent, where whenever the cameras are rolling, he could just turn it on and be that character in a heartbeat.
And there, the skills of Double J Jeff Jarrett.
And then his second character was a pissed off guy.
Don't even look me in the eye, because that's enough to piss me off. Whoa-oh.
At that time, the Attitude Era was red hot. I cut my hair and don't piss me off and The guitar really started to come in play, and so with the Attitude Era, Double J had a new attitude.
As his star rises in the WWF, Jeff balances the demands of his career with the responsibilities of a young family.
I had my first wrestling match April 6th of '86. April 8th of '86, 2 days later, Jill and I had our first date. She was a sophomore, a few years younger than me, so we were both just kids. Fell in love, and we were both ready to conquer the world. She was someone that very quietly always supported me behind the scenes in a major way. She never was around the wrestling business. It was kind of from maybe the old school mentality that I went off to work and she stayed home, and that was how she liked it. She had her first round of breast cancer in the late 90s, and so I stayed home to take care of our first daughter. It was just a real tough time. But she got better, and I went back on the road. And I was kind of right in the middle of it with Owen.
That's that Owen. He's a Canadian hero, Owen is. Owen's from Canada, Jeff Jarrett from right here in Tennessee.
Our life experiences were very similar. Owen Hart was the son of a wrestling promoter, just like myself. We were both at our stage in life that, you know, young wives, new kids, our career. It's hard to describe unless you really are the son of a wrestling promoter. He was my best friend.
They were a great tag team because they'd both been in the business and around the business since they were kids.
Here we go now. Blazer off the rope, delivers an elbow.
And at that point, they'd given Owen the blue blazer gimmick. And he would fly into the ring for this big grand entrance. And that's why he ended up in a ceiling in Kemper Arena.
Authorities in Kansas City are investigating the death of a professional wrestler in a spectacular stunt that went wrong last night. Owen Hart was being lowered by a cable into the ring when he suddenly plunged. The audience had to be told it wasn't part of the show.
There was no wrestling storyline, there was no angle, and my best friend died in a work accident.
Ladies and gentlemen, when you're doing live television, a lot of things can happen, and sometimes they are not good. The blue blazer, as we know, as Owen Hart, was going to make a very spectacular superhero-like entrance from the rafters, and something went terribly wrong here.
All of a sudden, Owen's fallen. Owen's what? Owen fell. Owen's hurt.
He was coming down on a cord, and all of a sudden it snapped, and he dropped, and they were pumping his chest.
Jeff literally had to stand there and watch them wheel Owen out.
First off, Owen Hart, I'm praying for you, buddy.
I've said before, I can't believe it had stopped the show.
I believe Jeff was the next match up. I don't know how he was able to pull off that match, seeing what had happened, being there.
Owen fell 82 feet to his death, and I was in the ring and walked through the crater that his body left.
I have the unfortunate responsibility to let everyone know that Owen Hart has died.
That had to just tear your heart out.
In this business, I guess you got a lot of acquaintances, but very few friends.
I wondered for many years and never voiced it. Why did Owen have to pass away? He's the good guy amongst all of us. Didn't drink, didn't smoke, didn't cuss hardly. Great husband, great father, great guy. So, survivor's remorse. I think I never wanted to face losing him, but stuffing it and putting on an emotional mask that I'm here to go to work. Never take time to grieve, never take time to be Jeff. In a lot of ways, that was the beginning of breaking me down.
Following the death of his friend Owen Hart, Jeff Jarrett grows frustrated with his role in the WWF.
At the age that I was, I could wrestle all night, every night. And so I was ready to go to work, but I wasn't a part of the main event crew.
Jeff didn't have the size, and he didn't have the over-the-top gimmick, like a Stone Cold Steve Austin or The Undertaker or something like that Vince saw as a main event level star. But at the same time, he was the Intercontinental Champion. However, Jeff's contract was coming to an end, and he had another option down south at the competition, WCW. So before he left the company, he was going to have to drop the Intercontinental title to China.
China, let's finish this thing once and for all.
I was owed about 3 or 4 months worth of money. Walking in the building that night, I knew I was never going to have any more leverage than before I dropped the belt.
He walked around the building, and he came back. He said, I think I'm gonna need $100,000.
I knew that Vince wanted China to become champion, and he knew he owed me a payoff, and I just made it very clear. You don't have to pay me, and I don't have to wrestle. The ball's in your court. And Vince just nods at me, and I nod back at him, and we shook hands, left.
Well, then Jeff walked around the building again when they came back.
And I said, well, what is there to lose? And so I asked for more money, and considerably more.
Jeff said, you know, I think I'm gonna need 200.
And that was it. Vince pulled the check out of his suit pocket, smiled, handed it to me, and he said, Jeff, I really enjoy doing business with you. I think the tape will show that when China pinned me 1, 2, 3, I don't think there was one person sitting in their seat. And then within 24 hours, I jumped from a WWF pay-per-view to a WCW Nitro.
Joining the WWF's biggest competitor, Jeff enters WCW already showing signs of decline, despite the recent arrival of a former colleague.
I met Jeff Jarrett when I was the head writer of Raw on WWF television. My name is Vince Russo, and I was the head writer, producer, and on-air talent for TNA Wrestling. When I was working at WCW, I put the belt on Jeff because Jeff was a great heel.
Then, in a shock to the wrestling world, Vince McMahon purchases WCW.
That's right, I own WCW.
And for Jeff Jarrett, the fallout is devastating.
Here's the thing. If Vince needed you at some point, he would forgive you. If Vince didn't need you, he didn't need to forgive you.
Well, there's Jeff Jarrett.
He never forgave Jeff, and Vince fired Jeff on the air.
You know how Jeff spells his name? That's J-E-F-F. Well, you know what? I would suspect that we'd spell it a different way after tonight. That would be capital G, double O, double N, double E. God.
That was Vince's way of rubbing it in, because Vince doesn't want to just take you out. He wants to take you out, humiliate you, spit on your face, and walk away while you're down the ground bleeding.
Jeff Jarrett so famously walked out of WWE, and his career, it seemed like he would never return. My name is Matt Hardy. I am one half of the iconic tag team known as the Hardy Boys. Being in the pro wrestling business his whole life, I mean, any human being that's going out and being slammed on wood and steel 10 nights back to back, and then driving 300, 350 miles to the next town, traveling nonstop, that's how he's wired. You know, we're cockroaches. You can't kill us off. You think you've killed us off, but you can't kill us off.
Coming back home from that final Nitro, I knew that I didn't know what was next. But I did have the blessing or the curse to understand that if Vince buys the number 2, that wouldn't be good for him or the industry.
So now, WCW was out of business. All the territories were gone. There's nothing else. There's a lot of wrestlers, don't have anywhere to go.
Everybody knew they were. It was a monopoly, so it wasn't a good thing. I'm Scott Steinoff. I've known Jeff Jarrett for 40 years. Unless you're going to do independence or Japan, yeah, there's no other place to work.
If Vince McMahon doesn't fire Jeff Jarrett on that last Nitro, there's no reason for Jeff to sit there and go, oh shit, there's no place for me to work. I better create one.
I started a series of collective conversations with my father about, I want to start a promotion. And I knew that I wanted to tap into that country music audience in Midwest, Southeast, WCW footprint. I wanted to tap into the NASCAR fan base. I had a real understanding that I'm going all in, and the original seed money came straight from Jeff Jarrett's bank account and Jerry Jarrett's bank account.
Together, Jeff and Jerry devise a bold new business model for a wrestling promotion.
The Jarretts came up with this plan where they were going to provide a $9.99 a week pay-per-view. WWE was the only game in town at that point, and their pay-per-views were $40 or $50 a month. I'm the sinister minister, Father James Mitchell, and I was part of TNA Wrestling from the very first show. Jeff was just really savvy, just like his dad was. And he also knew every swerve and bullshit wrestling trick that the guys tried to play on promoters.
Before they can make their promotion a reality, the Jarretts must find an investor willing to back their vision.
Drove down to Birmingham, Alabama to meet with a guy named Richard Scrushy. He was CEO of Health South, a top 5 organization in the world. I knew Richard personally, but I was ready to present to him as a businessman. I had my presentation, and he said, as crazy as it may sound, think we can do something here? And he said, how much you need? I was elated. And once you clear that hurdle, you go, oh, we thought that was the hard part, but the real hard part's coming up.
With the money secured and the concept in place, only one thing remains, a name.
As I'm forming this plan, I said, what's the name of our company? We're coming off the Attitude Era. I also knew that on pay-per-view, we don't have to worry about TV 14. We can definitely push the envelope. I wanted something in the branding of the name to make a difference.
Something showbiz.
Something wrestling.
Something to jumpstart what's going on.
Something with alliance or association.
Something that was an alternative.
Something to differentiate yourself from the competition.
Something that's crazy.
Let me make this clear to everybody watching at home. It came from me. Tits and ass.
Hell, when I told my mother I was working for a company called TNA, she'd say, tits and ass? What kind of pornography are you involved in?
Total nonstop action. And I went, that's different. It says exactly what it is. Okay, now it's time to go to work.
But the problem was, there definitely was a lot of people backstage thinking, this is doomed to failure. We'll get 1 or 2 shows out of it. This is just going to blow up in her face.
You want to talk about TNA? I got your total nonstop action right here, baby.
On June 19th, 2002, Total Nonstop Action debuts live on pay-per-view, turning the Jarrett's dream into reality.
It was the first show that I'd ever been the boss, the executive producer. I knew a lot was riding on the line.
There was a manic energy backstage. Right before they're about to go on the air, the ring broke. And they weren't sure they were going to be able to put it back together. There were people running around saying, we're doomed. And oh my God, it's time to back up and go home.
The ring literally got put back together as we were coming on the air. When I think about it, it's crazy.
It's all about total nonstop action.
Things got rolling along, and you may or may not say it's a little disjointed, but that's what happens with a live show. You know, at the end of the day, everything came off the way we wanted it to.
Toby Keith has Jarrett up.
After the first show, it was a real education for my father and myself, knowing the grind and knowing that you have to keep the show going.
Jeff and Jerry are determined to make their company a destination for the best wrestling in the world.
We wanted to have the traditional heavyweights with the NWA title and wanted to have the WCW/NWA footprint. And I was a huge fan of Lucha Libre wrestling, European wrestling, Japanese wrestling. There was a crop of young, independent talent that could do things that heavyweights couldn't. And so I wanted to brand it that way. And that was the X Division.
The top rope.
Can't talk about TNA without talking about AJ Styles. He was, from the very first show, he was the guy pegged to be the future, and AJ was super talented.
Though TNA gets off to a promising start, questions remain about its staying power.
You have to be a survivor in professional wrestling. There's too many things that try to go against you to try this cutthroat business.
I knew that when TNA first started that it wasn't going to be a competition to the WWE, but it was going to be an alternative. And there's money to be made and glory to be had in that.
Determined to make TNA a true competitor, Jeff brings in a polarizing figure from his past. In time, the move will spark a conflict pitting father against son.
Jeff said to me, Vince, I need you to write my TV. It was a no-brainer, and I went to work for Jeff.
Next week, it's a new day.
I knew that we weren't going to ever succeed if we didn't try different things.
My vision for TNA was to be just anything goes. There are no rules. This was gonna basically be an adult version of Glow.
Gorgeous ladies of wrestling.
With just crazy, crazy characters. Whatever we wanted to do, nothing like the WWE.
The Johnsons!
There was a tag team called the Johnsons, which were supposed to be a pair of penises that wrestled.
Operation Sex begins now. Go do your business.
I was working in WWE at the time, and Vince McMahon was curious. We all were. And we watched a couple of shows, and there was a scene with that was in a trash can having fun with himself.
What do you think, I'm spanking my monkey? Hey, little girl, how would you like to have a little porridge?
Those are some of the things that my dad would just want to pull his hair out. Like, it was so over the top for him that he's like, we're never going to recover from that.
I wanted to masturbate in a trash can, and Jerry Jarrett wanted to do 1970 USWA. Here we are on pay-per-view. We're supposed to be different, no holds barred. We were on two completely different pages.
I will shoot your kneecaps off. Whoa! Oh, my God! I never thought I'd be happy to see that.
People want to be entertained, and there are about this many people that are entertained by guys jumping around in a ring for 40 minutes.
The existence of Vince Russo and the way he talked about professional wrestling was insulting and offensive to Jerry Jarrett on a personal level.
Been a lot of discussion, a lot of rumors about your relationship with Vince Russo.
I'm confused about the man. All I can...
Jerry Jarrett hated me from the jump. Jeff wants me to write the TV. Jerry wants to write the TV. To be in the middle of a father and a son, it was a horrible spot to be in, and I did not enjoy it.
I knew Vince would lean more into the tits and ass side of it, risque, push the envelope with that type of content. And then my dad loved action. So the yin and the yang between Russo and my father, I always thought was a healthy balance.
When I get my...
It was a very exciting time to be there, but they were always teetering on the edge of disaster.
Just as TNA's unique vision begins to take shape, a shocking development threatens the company's very existence.
We were putting all the pieces together. You have the production, you have the talent. We are almost there. And then I got the call from Health South. Hey, Jeff, the funding is being pulled. Okay, so it's over.
Congressional investigators have subpoenaed Richard Scrushy to testify.
Just weeks after its launch, TNA is rocked by a scandal no one could have anticipated.
Scrushy's world first began to come apart last March when one of his chief financial officers went to federal prosecutors and confessed that Health South, at Scrushy's express direction, had been overstating its profits hugely for years.
I got into the office at 9:30 in the morning after a Wednesday night show, and I'll never forget it, on speakerphone, and Health South said, Jeff, Richard's got bigger issues to worry about, and so we're gonna quit the funding. There was an eerie silence. What about the line of credit? It's pulled. Are you gonna fund last night's show? No. Okay. It made front page news, and it was a crazy time. So I knew that I had a massive amount of work in front of me with a very short time frame. There was no more money in the account, and so I started making calls.
I went out with Jeff, and he'd been drinking a little bit. Then he broke the news to me about Health South. And I know that's why he was drinking. Jeff was very distraught. Jeff was very depressed.
I was going to all my vendors and contractors to let them know that, hey, my funding's been pulled, but I'm gonna go find money. But if you wanna jump off this train now, I completely understand.
One of those contractors is Dixie Carter, president of a public relations agency hired by TNA.
Dixie Carter told him he needs to have a conversation with her parents. He had no idea who her parents were and what they were worth.
Her father was the owner and chairman of Panda Energy International.
If you're like everybody else in the world, who the is Bob Carter and what is Panda Energy? Come to find out, he's a multi-millionaire in Texas.
Next thing you know, me and my father are headed to Dallas to meet with Dixie's father. And so he wanted to take a look at this potential investment.
If I won the Powerball lottery for $50 billion, I would not start a pro wrestling company under any circumstances. It is a pain in the ass.
We go into our presentation, have the conversation. Bob Carter looked at me. Jeff, how much of your money do you have into this thing? And I told him. And he said, okay, we've got the private plane for y'all. We're gonna take y'all back to Nashville, but we think we can do some business here. And that was the beginning of the Carter-Jarrett relationship.
That was just an absolute gift from heaven to keep this company going. We were still in business.
In 2005, TNA secures its biggest opportunity yet, a national television deal for its flagship show on Spike TV.
By the time TNA got to Spike TV, they had a strong roster. They had great production, and they had a very loyal, rabid fan base that they could count on being there every week.
We started on a 1-hour show off Prime, so that's Saturday nights at 11 Eastern. The numbers we did were fantastic, and we were getting traction and really truly becoming an alternative to the WWE.
As Impact becomes a hit on Spike TV and TNA turns a profit, Jeff Jarrett's company continues to innovate.
With the surgence of the UFC and the Octagon, I really wanted the six-sided ring.
The six-sided ring, that was what was so unique about TNA in the early days. My name is Jeffrey Nero Hardy, and I'm a professional wrestler, and I've known Jeff Jarrett for at least 30 years. When I went to TNA for the first time, I walked with Jeff to the curtain and looked out there, and it was my first time seeing the hexagon ring, and Jeff said, "What do you think?" And I said, "Oh, man, it looks like the future."
I wanted to give a more sports-oriented feel as opposed to entertainment-oriented.
The six-sided ring became part of TNA's identity. I'm Vila Brown, professional wrestler for over 30 years, and I was a producer/agent for TNA Wrestling. A lot of the fans had hooked on to TNA's identity, and part of that identity was the ring, was the look, was the above-the-rope wrestling technique. You know, AJ Styles diving over top rope, Christopher Daniels moonsaulting off the top of whatever, either Skipper tightrope walking on top of a cage.
But even as TNA's fortunes improve, fan criticism of its top star becomes increasingly difficult to ignore.
In case you didn't know, I am the NWA World Heavyweight Champion.
Is there an argument to be made that Jeff Jarrett shouldn't have held the title for 1,000+ days? Absolutely. Jeff Jarrett was not one of the favorites of the fans. They thought that somebody else should be put in that spot. But I mean, I don't think Jeff ever sat there going, hey, I'm doing this because it's for me. The last thing you want to do business-wise is put the title on somebody you can't trust.
Jeff Jarrett knew he wasn't going to walk out on himself. He wasn't going to hold himself up for more money. TNA was his baby. He had to get it started, and he had to get it to the point where it was flying on its own.
Despite the success, trouble is brewing behind the scenes. As Jerry Jarrett's clashes with the Carter family intensify, he grows disillusioned with both the company and his son.
My dad came to a point in his life that me and him were not going to be seeing eye to eye on anything by any stretch of the imagination.
The worst struggle I've ever had in my life. Emotionally and personally with Jeff, and then it just became a living hell when I had to deal with the Carters.
After 60 years of wrestling, no one was going to tell my father how to run a wrestling company. He felt his legacy was being tarnished. He was sour on the Carters, he was sour on me, he was sour on Russo, he was sour on so many things, and he became bitter. The tension built, and rightly so. The financial component of it, the Carter family, them feeling pressure. It was never outright said, but kind of implied that Panda was a little stressed, wanted to see a little daylight. And my father came to me a couple of times and he's like, son, we got to get out. This isn't going right. The Carters are not treating us right.
To get out of his contract with TNA, Jerry engineers a scandal, hoping it will get him fired.
Jerry Jarrett told me, I don't want to do this anymore. He had a connection with this Russian guy who had a big background. And instead of taking him to TNA, he was seen in the WWF office.
Picture was taken with Jerry Jarrett and the guy there in front of the WWE logo, and I'm sure that was contrived by Vince.
It's being positioned as high treason. Because you clicked on WWE.com, and the first thing you see is Jerry. You know, like I didn't see Jerry at TNA again after that.
I was surprised. My father, he knew what he was doing. Dad, I think we need to take a little break. And we hung up the phone and didn't talk for several years. I'm well aware of my character defects. I'm well aware of my upbringing and how I process things and the transactional nature that I was raised in. My mom was very transactional. My dad was very transactional. I was estranged from my mother. Now I was estranged from my father. It really hurt me.
Oh, there's Jeff's father, Jerry Jarrett.
And that's when things went from bad to worse, when my wife's breast cancer had come back a second time.
Already estranged from both parents, Jeff faces his greatest challenge yet when his wife, Jill, receives a devastating diagnosis.
I've got 3 young kids. My wife gets sick. And when it came back, and the type that it came back, I knew we were in a rough road. At that time, I had stepped out of the ring and I was trying to focus strictly on home life and business. I knew one of them had to give.
He loved her so much, and to see somebody he loves so much dying, and him being helpless to stop that?
At this point in time, we had moved the creative meetings to Jeff's house because Jill was really deep in her battle, and Jeff rightfully wanted to be close to home.
It was really hard because I hadn't seen her in a while. And the Jill I knew was so vibrant and smiling, and she was an athlete, and she was always healthy.
No, she was just an amazing person, just a great girl, smart and, beautiful. And she was just,
I witnessed a woman fight for her life, day in and day out. And the thing that she was fighting for, I knew she loved me. She loved her parents, loved her siblings, but she loved her girls. And that's what she'd cry out at night. She didn't want to leave her girls. And I carried that with me for a lot of years. She passed, 1 o'clock in the morning. I walked down to the dock by myself to kind of gather my thoughts, and I'm standing on the dock. I got my watch on, and I look down at it, and I see May 23rd. I said, "You son of a gun." Owen Hart died on May 23rd, 1999. So I knew in some kind of crazy way, everything's gonna be all right. My mother, till the day she died, hated the wrestling business. My dad, come to this time frame, we had our estrangement. Neither one of them came to the funeral.
Jerry Jarrett was one of the great wrestling promoters of all time, but Jerry Jarrett was not a perfect person.
After Jill's passing, I was trying to survive as a father and really trying to survive as a businessman on every level. I knew that my single biggest job moving forward was going to be a provider for my 3 little girls. And so, to my detriment, just like the passing of Owen, very little grieving, I went right back to work.
Next time on Dark Side of the Ring.
There was this power play, if you will, orchestrated by Dixie Carter, who I'd hired. She wanted more, and she wanted more of the credit.
At some point, it came out that Jeff had been romantically involved with Kurt Angle's wife, Karen.
And a lot of the boys, they turn the nose up at it. It's just not what you do.
This was Dixie's excuse to put Jeff to the side once and for all.
This is a real chess move by Dixie. She manipulated all of them, every step of the way.
She was going to try anything to get him out. She finally got her wish.
At that point, I knew that my time had come to an end at TNA.
Nation of crucial evidence served multiple purposes: to calm and contain individuals potentially in shock, to gather initial, unfiltered statements before narratives could be solidified, and, significantly, to implicitly separate them as key sources of information, or, crucially, as individuals who might be under suspicion. Radley's emotional state, while deeply affecting in a perfectly natural, understandable response to such an overwhelming and sudden upheaval, was clearly one of profound, numbing shock and visceral disbelief. I remember I asked one of the cops, I'm like, "Is my dad?" I felt like such an idiot, but I'm like, Is my dad alive? He just, shook his head. No. The simple, universal, yet devastating gesture of the headshake from the experienced officer, delivered with a somber professionalism, communicated a crushing finality, extinguishing any last desperate shred of hope Radley might have harbored and ushering in the grim, inescapable reality of irreversible loss. For Radley, the sudden and violent absence of his father, regardless of the inherent complexities and tensions within their relationship, was an immediate, personal, and utterly profound catastrophe. The immediate, thorough, and highly professional assessment of the bathroom crime scene, meticulously conducted by forensic specialists and homicide detectives, almost instantly and powerfully challenged the prevailing, yet now fragile and scientifically untenable, assumption of suicide. The first thing I did was assess the scene in the bathroom. There was blood spatter everywhere. Pretty much, it was on the walls, on the sink, on the bathtub. This forceful reiteration of the widespread and pervasive blood distribution unequivocally confirmed a highly dynamic, incredibly violent, and intensely personal event, starkly contrasting with the precise, controlled, and often less chaotic single-point lethality typically associated with self-inflicted gunshot wounds. Furthermore, environmental details observed at the scene eloquently spoke to the brutal suddenness and violent interruption of a routine, private moment. The shower was still running. Mr. Horowitz was nude and had apparently been showering at the time that this had happened. The continuous flow of water, an emblem of daily cleansing and routine domesticity, tragically symbolized life abruptly and violently arrested, a private, daily ritual brutally and mercilessly interrupted. The victim's complete nudity powerfully suggested a profound state of vulnerability and complete unawares. Highlighting the intimate and unexpected nature of the attack, he was caught completely unawares, utterly unprepared for confrontation, in one of his most private and unsuspecting moments. This detail added a layer of profound violation and deep personal insult to the crime. Amidst these grim, increasingly compelling, and scientifically contradictory details, a singular, seemingly innocuous piece of physical evidence, initially overlooked in the immediate chaos but meticulously uncovered during the professional crime scene analysis, subtly yet significantly and unequivocally contradicted the rapidly fading suicide theory, powerfully catching the keen and experienced eye of the seasoned investigators. A single detail immediately stands out as odd to investigators. He was kind of on his side, and there was a phone receiver next to his hand. This apparently innocuous objector, mere telephone receiver lying in such an anomalous and desperate proximity to the victim's hand, became an unexpected yet critical linchpin for definitively and fundamentally shifting the entire investigative narrative. For a criminal psychology analyst and a seasoned detective, operating under the rigorous demands of forensic science and logical deduction, this small, seemingly misplaced observation carries immense analytical weight and profound implications. A person unequivocally intent on committing suicide typically intends to end all forms of communication, to sever all earthly connections, to deliberately cut themselves off from the living world. They do not, under normal circumstances, seek to initiate a new one, or, crucially, to struggle desperately for contact in their final moments. The way the blood splatter is, Lanny's trying to get to that phone that's in the bathroom, which, if you're committing suicide, you're not going to try to pick up the phone. This critical, logical, and unassailable deduction, carefully articulated by experienced investigators based on the precise spatial relationship between Laney's lifeless body, the oddly placed phone, and the meticulously analyzed patterns of blood spatter, pointed firmly and irrefutably away from any notion of self-harm and squarely towards the chilling reality of an external assailant. Lanny's final, desperate, instinctual act, therefore, was demonstrably not one of self-destruction, but a valiant, tragically aborted bid for survival or a desperate, unvoiced cry for help, utterly consistent with being violently attacked. The trajectory of the entire investigation pivoted decisively and irreversibly at this critical juncture, moving definitively from a preliminary presumption of tragic accident or self-harm, meticulous search for malicious intent, and act of malice. Obviously, law enforcement wants to know what happened, what precipitated this event in this house, and was nobody else present. The immediate, pressing questions for the detective team had fundamentally shifted from merely documenting the crude manner of death to painstakingly reconstructing the precise sequence of events. identifying any and all precipitating factors within the confines of the house, and definitively determining the exact presence, or definitive absence, of any other individuals at the precise moment of the violent attack. This concentrated and deeply focused inquiry explicitly marked the official beginning of a full-fledged homicide investigation, mandating a far more profound and psychologically informed understanding of the complex human dynamics, entangled relationships, and deep-seated conflicts that existed within the very walls of the house. Bradley's emotional state, while deeply affecting and a perfectly natural, understandable response to such an overwhelming and sudden upheaval, nevertheless existed within the growing, uneasy shadow of deeper investigative suspicions, even as he expressed his honest shock and profound bewilderment. "I was shell-shocked. I couldn't believe that. My dad was gone." His words articulated a deep, visceral pain, confusion, and sense of loss, regardless of the inherent complexities and tensions that had long existed within his relationship with his father. This emotional devastation, common and entirely human among those suddenly bereaved, nevertheless remained a significant, albeit emotionally colored, data point in the larger, intricate investigative puzzle to be processed and understood. Lanny Horwitz's life had begun far from the palm-lined beaches of Florida, in a robust northern city, specifically defined by its industrious spirit, its resilience, and its inherent hard-working ethos. Born in Buffalo, New York, on July 30, 1945, Lanny Horwitz learned the power of money at a young age. This profoundly formative and early introduction to the raw mechanics, the subtle nuances, and the intrinsic power dynamics of finance, instilled in him from an impressionably young age, irrevocably shaped his ambitious trajectory, and undeniably defined his most central life's pursuits. His father's demonstrated financial success and entrepreneurial drive served as a powerful, direct, and inescapable exemplar, firmly establishing a clear path to emulate. My dad's father was successful. He'd been a furrier, and then he got into real estate. This potent familial legacy of entrepreneurial spirit, keen business acumen, and relentless drive provided a clear vocational pathway, and perhaps even an unspoken, yet immense, pressure for Lanny to achieve similar, if not significantly greater, financial milestones in his own burgeoning life. My dad grew up with 3 other siblings and had a happy, comfortable life growing up, but his father instilled a very good work ethic in him. The comfortable upbringing, providing a stable foundational environment, combined with a rigorously instilled, unyielding work ethic, forged a formidable and highly driven individual, seemingly destined for significant material success. Lanny was demonstrably not merely a passive recipient of inherited wealth or fortuitous opportunity. He actively and relentlessly pursued it, demonstrating an innate talent for business, shrewd negotiation, and aggressive financial accumulation from a remarkably precocious age. Lanny proved to be a natural entrepreneur and started building his own fortune at the age of 16. This astonishingly early display of business savvy, financialist, and relentless determination showcased a remarkable individual drive that would define his entire career. His defining characteristic, above all others, was an unyielding, almost relentless drive, a tireless and focused energy meticulously channeled into financial accumulation, power acquisition, and constant expansion. He was very driven, very motivated. He was trading stocks. He was involved in real estate with his father. Lanny's precocious and deep immersion into the intricate worlds of finance and property management at such an impressionable young age speaks volumes about his inherent character. Acutely focused on capital accumulation, strategic expansion, and the relentless, often ruthless, pursuit of profit. And he was a real good. This succinct and powerful epithet perfectly encapsulated his energetic, tenacious, and at times unapologetically ruthless pursuit of success, a trait that frequently brings immense material rewards, considerable recognition, and widespread admiration, but can, equally frequently, leave a discernible trail of emotional casualties, strained relationships, and resentful individuals in its relentless wake. Lanny's formidable ambition, however, extended far beyond the realm of mere business acumen and financial prowess. It manifested with equal intensity, and often a controlling, possessive nature, in matters of the heart and in his personal relationships. The intricate narrative of his romantic life began with a seemingly fated and powerful encounter, setting the stage for a dramatic, complex, and ultimately tragic personal history. Lanny and Donna Horowitz met and started dating when she was about 15 and he was about 16. Theirs was a youthful, burgeoning romance, blossoming at a tender and highly impressionable age, that gradually laid the foundational groundwork for a lifelong, albeit profoundly turbulent, emotionally fraught, and ultimately destructive connection. The story my father told me was when he saw my mom coming down the stairs at this house that he knew, then that's who he wanted to marry. This romanticized origin story, painting a vivid picture of fated attraction and immediate, overwhelming certainty, hinted at the powerful, almost possessive, and unyielding nature of his early affections under the crushing weight of time, betrayal, and unaddressed resentments, sour into a desperate struggle for control, emotional manipulation, and profound unhappiness. Donna, too, hailed from a background firmly rooted in privilege, established social standing, and a recognized presence within her community. Donna, she had been raised with money. My grandfather on my mom's side, Don, was very successful. He was a local baseball celebrity in Buffalo with the Bisons, and he knew absolutely everybody in town. Her lineage offered her a world of secure social connections, considerable inherited affluence, and a distinct advantage, making her an ostensibly fitting and highly desirable counterpart for Laney's burgeoning financial and social aspirations. She moved effortlessly within circles of influence, possessing a certain natural grace, an inherent charm. My mom was very warm, and everybody loved her. Donna's engaging, affectionate, and socially adept personality, often contrasting quite sharply with Laney's fiercely driven, at times coldly calculating, and sometimes ruthless business demeanor, offered a compelling and potentially balancing interpersonal dynamic that held the promise of a harmonious partnership. The young couple nurtured their developing romance throughout their formative teenage years, a period marked by shared experiences, mutual growth, and deepening affection, ultimately culminating in their formal marriage in just prior to Donna's 21st birthday. Their union was met with palpable community approval, widespread social acknowledgement, and strong familial support from both sides, as evidenced by public record. The families were supportive. The wedding made the paper and stuff like that because of my grandfather. Everybody was pretty happy. The public celebration, meticulously documented in local papers and society columns, marked their formal entry into adult life, seemingly destined for enduring happiness, mutual respect, shared prosperity, and an unwavering marital bond. For years following their Lanny achieved another significant academic milestone, signaling his intellectual prowess, strategic thinking, and a pragmatic approach to leveraging knowledge, though it would not be for a conventional legal career. 4 years later, Lanny graduated from law school and continued to pursue a career in real estate. Crucially, his attainment of a law degree served less as a direct vocational pursuit in legal practice, and far more as a powerful, instrumental tool to strategically amplify and secure his existing and rapidly expanding business endeavors in the cutthroat world of real estate. My thing with the law degree is it's like karate. It's very good to know, and you hope you never need it. This illustrative and insightful analogy, explicitly comparing the utility and strategic advantage of legal knowledge to a formidable martial art, clearly articulated Lanny's almost utilitarian and subtly mercenary view of education and acquired professional skills. For him, the law was emphatically not an end in itself or a calling, but a potent strategic advantage, a weapon to be skillfully deployed, deftly maneuvered, and expertly utilized in the fiercely competitive and often litigious arena of real estate development and investment. So, being a developer, it was extremely helpful for him in business. This advanced legal acumen undoubtedly contributed immensely to his subsequent and significant successes, affording him an undeniable and crucial edge over his less legally savvy or well-prepared competitors, enabling him to navigate complex contracts, convoluted land deals, and regulatory challenges with formidable expertise and confidence, further propelling his rise to wealth. Donna and Lanny further solidified their family unit with the birth of their son, Radley, in 1907, marking another conventional and outwardly idyllic step in their affluent life path. A few years thereafter, a major environmental event, etched irrevocably into the collective memory of an entire region, profoundly catalyzed a monumental and life-altering decision, one that would fundamentally redefine their geographical landscape and dramatically accelerate their economic trajectory. Buffalo, New York. The blizzard of '77. They're still talking about up there, and my father was stuck downtown for several days in an office building. It was that bad of a storm. This extreme weather phenomenon, a landmark event of epic proportions in Buffalo's history, served as the ultimate, undeniable, and compelling catalyst for their significant relocation, pushing them towards warmer climes. It provided the impetus for a grand migratory gesture, a decisive break from the harsh northern winters. That was what convinced my parents to do the pilgrimage down to South Florida. The irresistible lure of perennial sunshine, the seductive promise of escape from harsh, unforgiving northern winters, and the burgeoning, often highly profitable, real estate markets of Florida proved too compelling to ignore, promising not just a warmer climate, but also fertile ground for rapid financial expansion and further boundless wealth accumulation. Real estate in Florida has historically been very profitable. This was a right place to be able to come and make money. The strategic timing of their move, seizing opportune market conditions, indeed paid rich dividends, exceeding expectations. Lanny swiftly and confidently established himself as a highly successful, influential, and aggressive figure in the Sunshine State's booming property sector, solidifying his already robust financial standing into an empire. The move paid off. Lanny quickly found success in the Sunshine State. He provided very well for the family. Donna was a homemaker. Their household dynamics settled into a traditional, seemingly and unequivocally affluent structure, with Lanny as the primary, highly capable, and increasingly wealthy financial provider, and Donna meticulously managing the sophisticated operations of their luxurious home, assiduously maintaining the public facade of effortless domestic bliss. Their chosen sanctuary in Jupiter, Florida, epitomized the pinnacle of opulent living. It was the illustrious Admiral's Cove, a veritable emblem of privileged existence, synonymous with exclusive comfort, profound status, and serene, gated isolation. In Jupiter, the place that my parents built in, it was called Admiral's Cove. It was a private community, water access, and very affluent, very nice. A lot of money, nice cars, boats, golf courses, tennis, all that sort of thing. This richly descriptive passage vividly paints a comprehensive picture of an almost impossibly luxurious lifestyle, meticulously characterized by exclusive amenities, conspicuous displays of opulent possessions such as high-end automobiles, an impressive water, and an array of sophisticated leisure activities, all the tangible accoutrements and desired symbols of immense and highly visible wealth. It was a self-contained world designed expressly for the elite, a meticulously curated bastion of quiet prosperity and carefully maintained exclusivity. Radley Horowitz, as an only child, grew up deeply entrenched and effectively insulated within this gilded cage, afforded every imaginable educational opportunity and expansive experiential advantage that immense wealth could bestow. Radley Horowitz was an only child. He had a very good education. He was a well-educated, very smart young man. His privileged upbringing undeniably instilled in him a sharp intellect, offered him unparalleled opportunities for global exposure, diverse cultural experiences, and high-leveled educational pursuits. Growing up, most of the memories were happy with my parents, and we took a lot of trips. London, when I was a little kid. We were in Italy at the Vatican about a week before the Pope was shot, went to Hawaii, and they started building this ridiculously big house up in Asheville, North Carolina. These lavish, global adventures, experienced from a tender age, and monumental investments, such as the sprawling, opulent North Carolina estate, projected an external image of a extraordinarily successful and deeply harmonious family, living a life that countless others could only ever dream of or aspire to. To any external observer, witnessing their conspicuous consumption, their effortless social grace, and their seemingly endless opportunities, the Horowitz family had undoubtedly achieved the zenith of modern success, meticulously accumulating all the quintessential symbols and tangible hallmarks of a truly fulfilling, envied life, to all outward appearances. The Horowitz family had it all. They had a very high standard of living. I think there was a Maserati. They had the North Carolina home. They're flying first class. All the accoutrements to what people perceive as success. The presence of a sleek Maserati, an unmistakable symbol of high-performance luxury, the possession of multiple private homes in highly prestigious locations, and the effortless, routine experience of first-class international travel. These were not merely casual luxuries. but potent statements, visible declarations of their unparalleled prosperity, unassailable status, and apparent invincibility to the mundane problems of everyday life. Yet, as so often occurs beneath this shimmering, meticulously polished surface of material success and public perfection, a dark, corrosive, and insidious undercurrent of unresolved personal conflict, deep-seated resentment, pervasive emotional dysfunction, and simmering betrayals secretly festered, hidden from the world. And now, this carefully constructed, fragile edifice of the good life had utterly and violently crumbled, giving way, with shattering and irreparable speed, to an unimaginably tragic and irreversible conclusion. Initially, and rather conveniently for some within the immediate orbit, dismissed by initial responders as a simple suicide, the relentless and systematic investigative work of the Florida police was progressively and painstakingly unearthing compelling, undeniable evidence that Lanny's death involved undeniable foul play, unequivocally moving the entire narrative definitively and dramatically into the grim and chilling territory of deliberate, calculated murder. The illusion was finally, tragically, broken. A single, crucial, forensic detail, initially overlooked in the immediate chaos of the emergency response, but later meticulously uncovered during the professional crime scene analysis, definitively and irrevocably contradicted the preliminary, erroneous suicide assessment, causing a seismic and immediate shift in the investigation's entire direction and premise. There was a bullet hole in the towel that was draped over the shower door, and it had stippling, which would be gunpowder burns on the outside of the towel. This finding was nothing short of a forensic bombshell, utterly dismantling the existing hypothesis of self-inflicted harm with scientific precision. The distinctive pattern of unburnt or partially burnt gunpowder particles that are forcibly embedded into soft tissue or fabric when a firearm is discharged at extremely close range, is an undeniable and highly specific indicator of proximity to the point of firing. Crucially, its explicit and scientifically verifiable presence on the outside of the towel, which had been innocently draped over the shower door, meant, with unassailable scientific certainty, that the fatal shot had come from an external position relative to Lanny inside the shower enclosure, which tells you that the gunshot was from the outside and not coming from the inside of the shower. The implications of this forensic revelation were immediate, undeniable, and utterly irreversible for the trajectory of the investigation. It was clear to them that this was not a suicide. This indisputable and scientifically validated piece of physical evidence irrevocably transformed the very nature of the case, shifting it from a tragic accident or a self-inflicted wound to a confirmed and heinous act of deliberate violence. The primary question was no longer if Lanny had tragically taken his own life, but definitively and urgently who had violently and mercilessly taken it from him. Now we need to find out who killed Lanny Horton. The dramatic and profound shift from interpreting a sudden death as an accidental tragedy to definitively identifying it as a deliberate, malicious, and violent act was absolute, requiring a complete reorientation of investigative efforts, a refocusing of resources, and an immediate, systematic search for a compelling motive, the precise means, and the critical opportunity for murder. The evolving narrative of the crime, with its shocking initial revelations, now clearly hinted at further layers of profound complexity, deep-seated deception, an impending emotional exposure that would inevitably unravel the intricate tapestry of Lanny's life. Coming up, scandalous secrets are exposed. It looked like it was more than just a business relationship. This foreboding promise indicated that the ostensibly professional relationships Lanny Horton had cultivated would soon yield to the painful and public exposure of intimate betrayals, clandestine affairs, and perhaps even illicit financial dealings, all factors to which, for a criminal psychology analyst, are frequently the intensely personal motivations that fuel the most passionate, explosive, and ultimately violent crimes within domestic settings. Furthermore, the perplexing possibility of multi-person involvement, initially posited as a confounding and disturbing anomaly, stubbornly persisted as a potent and credible theory, given the overwhelming nature of the violence. And detectives question whether they're looking for more than one suspect. 10 shots had been fired. It could have been 2 shooters. The sheer numerical count of 10 bullet wounds, a stark testament to the intense and prolonged nature of the violence, continued to exert significant psychological and logistical pressure on the investigation, leaving open the chilling possibility of coordinated malevolence by multiple individuals, or, alternatively, painting a picture of an individual acting with an almost terrifying and manic intensity of rage and lethal resolve, methodically reloading under extreme duress to ensure the victim's absolute demise. The profound volume of shots fired indicated a personnel, rather than purely pragmatic, motivation for the killing. With definitive forensic evidence firmly establishing Lanny Horowitz's death as a confirmed murder, the Florida police formally and systematically transitioned their extensive efforts into a rigorous homicide investigation. This crucial reclassification, based on irrefutable scientific evidence, mandated a far more rigorous, meticulous, and comprehensive approach to the crime scene, to potential witnesses, and to the immediate family members inextricably involved. The formal arrival of the medical examiner, a crucial and scientifically authoritative figure in the process of systematically unmasking death's true nature, signaled the next critical phase, shifting the primary forensic focus from the immediate, blood-soaked crime scene to the victim's body itself for a detailed and exhaustive post-mortem examination. Once the medical examiner arrived, he rolled the body over, and we were able to get a better look at the wounds on his body. This systematic procedure, meticulously designed to reveal areas of the body previously obscured by the chaotic scene or initial positioning, immediately brought to light the full, horrifying, and devastating extent of the violence inflicted upon Lanny. Even though you couldn't tell how many times he'd been shot, it was clear and obvious to the police that he'd been shot more than once. This crucial preliminary observation, made at the scene itself before the body was fully transported and processed, immediately and unequivocally shattered the initial superficial possibility of a singular, quick gunshot. The visual evidence of extensive and widespread trauma was compelling and undeniable. We noticed there were multiple bullet wounds on his right arm, on his torso. The enumeration of distinct wound sites, specifically his right arm, strongly suggesting a desperate, defensive posture as he tried to fend off the attack, and his torso painted a grim and indelible picture of a brutal, repeated, and highly determined assault, powerfully suggesting a victim actively trying to defend himself or a perpetrator, maniacally determined to absolutely ensure certain death through sustained, merciless violence. With the medical examiner transporting the body for a detailed, exhaustive, and scientific autopsy, a crucial forensic process that would meticulously reveal precise bullet paths, confirm the specific caliber and type of projectiles, determine the definitive number of wounds, and extract crucial toxicology data, simultaneously intensified their comprehensive focus on the immediate crime scene. They were meticulous in their efforts to painstakingly reconstruct the precise sequence of events, understand the dynamics of the confrontation, and definitively identify the individual or individuals responsible for this heinous act. The bathroom, once a private and intimate sanctuary, now a confined and tragically desecrated enclosure, held a veritable treasure trove of minute and macroscopic forensic clues. There were projectiles pretty much everywhere in the bathroom. They were in the shower, on the floor. There were some in the walls. There were some in the bathtub. The widespread dispersion of bullets, bullet fragments, and casing across various surfaces further corroborated the highly chaotic, intensely violent, and dynamic nature of the attack, powerfully suggesting a struggle, a perpetrator moving rapidly while firing, or multiple shots aimed without a fixed position, rather than a static, single execution. Crucially, the total count of rounds fired, precisely recorded by evidence technicians, remained an alarming and highly significant figure. It was determined that 10 shots had been fired, at least one of which is what set the glass shatter alarm off. The precise count of 10 shots was a powerful numerical statement of lethal intent, bordering on overkill, demanding a close and highly specialized examination of the weaponry involved, its capacity, and the shooter's resolve. The revolver initially discovered near Lanny's lifeless form, though regrettably moved by the well-meaning security guard in the immediate chaos, remained a key, albeit complex due to its displacement, piece of physical evidence. However, its standard design capacity immediately posed a perplexing logistical challenge when carefully weighed against the meticulously documented 10-shot count found throughout the crime scene. The gun didn't have enough capacity to have fired all the number of bullets that had been fired. Most standard revolvers, by their inherent mechanical design, typically hold either 5 or 6 rounds in their cylinder before requiring a This undeniable discrepancy between the discovered weapon's stated capacity and the actual number of shots fired necessitated a careful, strategic, and often forensic consideration of the entire firing sequence. So if the person was to use the same weapon, they would have to remove the casings and reload that firearm. This specific and deliberate act of reloading, demanding a momentary yet conscious pause in the frenzied, violent assault, implied a chilling level of sustained rage. An intentional and conscious continuation of the attack, rather than a singular, purely impulsive outburst. From a criminal psychology perspective, reloading a firearm during an active, violent act suggests a profound, unwavering determination, a killer, unwilling to let the victim survive. Regardless of the momentary interruption, the inherent risk, or the psychological fortitude required for such an action. This possibility, however, immediately sparked an even more unsettling and crucial question among the entire investigative team, widening the scope of their inquiry. Investigators questioned if this could point to a second murder weapon or something even more sinister. It could have been two shooters, the ominous specter of multiple assailants working in calculated concert, or a single, extremely resolute, a maniacally determined killer wielding two distinct weapons. Each discharged a maximum effect, introduced a terrifying layer of complexity to the developing profile of the crime and the perpetrator's psychological state, forcing investigators to consider more than one offender. A comprehensive and meticulously executed search of the entire Horowitz residence was deemed absolutely indispensable, strategically moving beyond the immediate, blood-soaked crime scene to systematically uncover any further, potentially critical evidence that might shed definitive light on the violent events of that fateful morning. There was a search warrant obtained from a judge to be able to search the house thoroughly, from top to bottom. This rigorous and extensive process, often revealing hidden facets of a household's lifestyle and the secret lives of its occupants, is an absolutely cornerstone practice of thorough criminal investigation. The detailed search unexpectedly yielded a rather surprising discovery regarding the sheer volume of firearms in the family's possession, a revelation that complicated the narrative of simple gun ownership. In total, we collected about 26 firearms from the home. We weren't expecting to find that many firearms in a house. This extensive collection spoke volumes about a specific interest, perhaps an inherent obsession, or a deep-seated cultural inclination towards pervasive gun ownership within the family, effectively transforming the presence of a single weapon in a tragic incident into a broader, environmental context of readily accessible and pervasive firepower within the domestic sphere. There was a firearm found in a locked safe, and in the attic there was a very extensive, expensive collection of firearms. While the responsible securing of many of these weapons in locked safes and hidden compartments might, in other less incriminating circumstances, suggest a degree of cautious foresight or the meticulous care of a serious collector, their sheer quantity collectively indicated a pervasive presence of guns in Laney's life, and, by direct extension, in the lives of those residing with him under the same roof, rendering them all intimately familiar with firearms. Crucially, amidst this sprawling arsenal of weaponry, one particular firearm stood out dramatically, bearing irrefutable recent evidence of having been discharged, offering a direct and unequivocal link to the profound tragedy of the morning. Most of the weapons are safely locked away and have not been fired recently, but they find one that has. This immediate and highly specific finding drastically honed the investigation's focus, narrowing it down to a select few weapons from the formidable collection. Another officer did find another firearm on the dresser in the master bedroom. That's connected to where the bathroom is. This second firearm, found conveniently and suspiciously on a dresser directly adjacent to the murder site, was also specifically a revolver, and, crucially, it too contained 5 spent casings, perfectly matching the number needed to complete the total 10-shot count, when meticulously combined with the 5 rounds from the first revolver. The discovery of 2 distinct weapons, both recently fired and found in close proximity to the crime scene, strongly supported the theory of an intensely violent, sustained attack involving either the rapid use of 2 weapons by one perpetrator or the involvement of 2 shooters, thereby solidifying the prosecution's ballistic understanding. Detectives immediately dispatched both revolvers to a crime lab for exhaustive and precise ballistics, testing a rigorous scientific process designed to definitively match fired bullets and casings to specific weapons, thereby providing unassailable physical proof of their use in the homicide. Meanwhile, their continued systematic and painstaking search of the property yielded another, the absolutely pivotal piece of information regarding potential entry points and the involvement of outside parties. They examined the perimeter of the home and determined that all the windows and doors were secure, locked from the inside. This meticulous inspection, verifying the integrity of the home's outer shell, firmly and unequivocally closed off the possibility of an external intruder gaining access via forced entry. So there was no evidence that somebody had broken in. The logical and undeniable conclusion for investigators, painstakingly built upon irrefutable physical and circumstantial evidence, became absolutely unavoidable, drastically and terrifyingly narrowing the pool of viable suspects. Now we have to think, is it somebody who was let in the house? Was it somebody in the house? The undeniable presence of only 3 individuals in the residence that fateful morning, Donna and Radley, meant the perpetrator was indisputably one of the 2 surviving occupants, or potentially both, acting in malevolent concert. It would be obvious that they would want to know from Bradley Horowitz and Donna Horowitz what's been going on. The investigation now focused sharply, intensely, and inexorably on the 2 surviving family members, their meticulously scrutinized accounts, their possible motives, and their inherent psychological dynamics. Officers first attempted, with trained professionalism and a sensitive approach, to engage directly with Donna Horowitz, hoping to obtain her immediate and unadulterated account of the shocking and chaotic events that had just transpired. However, her profound emotional state and her subsequent actions presented an immediate and significant obstacle to straightforward questioning, impeding the initial investigative flow. Officers first tried talking to Donna. She was sitting in the front passenger seat of a car in the driveway. She was in her pajamas. She had bare feet. She had her knees up to her chest and rocking back and forth. This profound physical posture, a classic, defensive, self-comforting, and highly agitated stance, frequently observed in individuals experiencing extreme trauma, profound fear, or acute psychological distress, painted a vivid and distressing picture of her current mental state, suggesting a profound internal crisis. Her verbal response, or more accurately, her persistent lack thereof, was equally telling and problematic for initial information gathering. She kept saying, oh boy, and she just kept saying that sitting in the car, oh boy. This repetitive, almost childlike, and emotionally desaturated utterance, delivered in a broken and distressed rhythm, strongly suggested an overwhelmed and fragmented mind, demonstrably incapable of coherent articulation, rational processing, or effective communication in the face of immense shock, profound guilt, or psychological dissociation, which often serve as coping mechanisms in extreme stress. My mum refused to talk to anybody. She's not really communicating. She doesn't want to give a statement. Her immediate withdrawal and categorical refusal to provide a statement, while unequivocally within her constitutional rights as a potential suspect, was nevertheless a highly significant factor for astute investigators. From a seasoned criminal psychology perspective, while genuine shock and trauma can indeed compel profound silence and an overwhelming desire for legal protection, a categorical and unwavering refusal to engage with authorities, especially in a case involving the brutal murder of one's spouse and without the immediate presence of legal counsel, often subtly yet distinctly raises heightened suspicion and fuels a detective's intensified focus. So, all of these things could be suggestive of somebody who's in a state of shock and trauma. While this initial assessment fairly acknowledged the very real possibility of genuine trauma impacting her capacity to communicate, it crucially did not, and could not, rule out other, potentially more sinister, psychological factors that might be contributing to her pervasive and absolute silence, such as fear of self-incrimination, or a need to conceal. Her son, Radley, by distinct and striking contrast to his mother's withdrawn, agitated state, presented a far more outwardly cooperative and seemingly composed demeanor, appearing notably more capable of responding directly and coherently to the probing questions from the seasoned detectives. Her son, Bradley, seems more capable of answering their questions. The detectives asked to talk to me in their car, and they were parked right in front of the house. The deliberate choice of the patrol car as an impromptu interview space, confined, slightly intimidating, and inherently official, often creates a psychological sense of isolation and subtle control, which can be strategically conducive to encouraging open disclosure and minimizing distractions from the active, unsettling crime scene directly before them. We sat in the car for maybe like 20 minutes. It was, somebody you see. I was down to sleep, and it was like pop, pop, and the alarm was going off, and I heard screaming. Radley's immediate and unfiltered account began with a vivid, auditory recollection of a terrifying and jarring awakening, the sharp, percussive sounds of insistent gunfire, quickly followed by the piercing, primal cries of frantic screaming. And finally, the relentless, mechanical blare of the house alarm. His visceral reaction to these jarring and sudden sounds, indicating a genuinely startled, deeply disturbed, and emotionally overwhelmed state, provided an initial, honest, and compelling human element to his narrative, confirming the raw, immediate horror. I was feeling scared. This candid and raw admission of intense fear provided an immediate and relatable psychological anchor to his testimony, underscoring the sudden and unexpected shock of the event, which seemed genuine. He then meticulously described the precise architectural layout of the home, a crucial detail for later verifying his stated observations. My pocket door. There's a little alcove, and it looks across the living room in front entrance. My parents' bedroom was on the other side. This specific architectural description would later allow investigators to meticulously assess the spatial accuracy and objective credibility of his claimed observations from his stated vantage point, thereby rigorously determining if what he physically said he saw was geometrically and physically possible. When pressed about his mother's demeanor in the immediate chaotic aftermath, Radley's description powerfully and independently corroborated the officer's initial, raw impressions, lending further weight to their observations. What was your mom's demeanor? What would she say? She was screaming. Was she saying anything? What happened? She was distraught. You know, I got her some water, and she calmed down. His depiction of his mother's extreme distress, consistent with profound shock and coupled with his seemingly spontaneous and empathetic act of offering her comfort, practical assistance, demonstrated a filial concern and protective instinct that, at face value, appeared entirely genuine and immediate in the moment of crisis. He then recounted catching a horrifying, yet crucially limited and indirect, glimpse of his father's final, agonizing moments within the bathroom. Through the bedroom door, he caught a glimpse of his father. My father was laying on the floor facing away from me, and then he made that horrible, gurgling noise. And I got out of there. I never went into the bathroom. This intensely visceral account suggested a traumatic, indirect witnessing of the grim aftermath of the violence, leading to an immediate and instinctive retreat from the scene, driven by profound shock, revulsion, and an understandable, overwhelming urge for self-preservation from a truly gruesome and emotionally scarring sight. When questioned about his seemingly delayed action in calling emergency services, an action that might otherwise be deemed highly unusual, given the circumstances, Radley directly attributed his inaction to his profound state of shock and overwhelming asserting that the security guard had arrived on the scene before he had the emotional or cognitive capacity to fully process the chaotic situation or take immediate, decisive action. When asked why he didn't immediately call 911, Radley claims he was in shock, and the guard showed up before he had the chance. He was very confused about what had happened, and, obviously, and understandably very upset. This explanation, deeply plausible and consistent with common human responses in the harrowing context of extreme stress and unexpected trauma, was carefully considered and provisionally accepted by investigators, at least for the immediate phase. Radley vehemently maintained his position that he had not physically seen who had fired the fatal shots, but consistently and strongly conveyed a resolute desire to cooperate fully and transparently with the entire investigation, eager to assist in any way he could to bring clarity to the tragedy. Radley says he didn't see who shot his father, but wants to help investigators however he can. I was trying to, cooperate with them. They asked if they could do a gunshot residue test on me. I'm like, okay. I'm like, let's do the test. His voluntary and immediate submission to a gunshot residue test, a common and highly specific forensic tool, demonstrated an overt openness and apparent lack of concealment, potentially arguing strongly against his direct physical involvement as the person who actually fired the weapon. This willing compliance was a significant psychological signal that he was not trying to hide his actions. However, as the detectives, seasoned in the intricate dance of interrogation and psychological profiling, subtly yet firmly shifted their probing questions, moving towards any potential motives or deeply rooted, pre-existing reasons why someone, particularly within Lanny's intimate family circle, might harbor intense animosity towards, or even desire to harm, Lanny. Radley offered a profoundly revealing glimpse into his father's complex, often morally ambiguous, and frequently problematic character. But when investigators ask him if he knows of any reason why someone might want to do this, he reveals his father wasn't exactly a saint. This candid and unvarnished admission, emanating from his own son, immediately and drastically complicated the victim's public image, irrevocably moving Lanny Horowitz beyond a simple, benign, wealthy businessman to a figure deeply entangled in significant personal baggage, ethical compromises, and profound emotional manipulation. Radley then forcefully introduced the insidious and profoundly corrosive theme of chronic marital infidelity as a major, ongoing, and destabilizing source of bitter conflict within the Horowitz household. There were allegations or accusations that Lanny developed an affair, or a more than business relationship with his business partner. This explicit revelation pointed directly and unequivocally to a long-standing, emotionally devastating source of profound marital discord and deeply rooted resentment within the Horowitz household, affecting both his mother and himself. My parents wound up getting divorced in, 2000, I think. After my parents divorced, my mom thought he'd been involved with Francine, but then when my mom and dad got back together, my mom finds out that my father's going to lunch with her. This convoluted, painful, and repeatedly dysfunctional marital history, marked by serial infidelity, temporary separation through divorce, and ill-fated reconciliation, provided a powerful, escalating narrative of prolonged betrayal and profound emotional torment, explicitly impacting his mother, Donna, in a devastating and cumulative fashion, creating a fertile ground for intense psychological distress. Radley meticulously explained and carefully distinguished Francine's dual and increasingly intertwined role in his father's life, attempting to separate what began as a professional acquaintance from what ultimately became a personal, intimate entanglement. He explained that Francine was an acquaintance, that she was actually in business with Mr. Horowitz. However, he was equally emphatic and unhesitating in stating that the relationship had long ago transgressed purely professional boundaries, irrevocably transforming into something far more intimate, clandestine, and emotionally compromising. My father kept telling her that she was just a business partner, but it looked like it was more than just a business relationship. There was a lot of sneaky stuff going on there with her. Radley's personal frustration, profound disappointment, and palpable sense of being constantly caught in the emotionally toxic crossfire of his parents' fraught and deeply unhealthy relationship were overtly evident and deeply felt in his recounting, conveying his own personal anguish. So, clearly, Radley also shed some light on that relationship. He was, shocked and disappointed that his dad was going to continue with this behavior, which clearly was upsetting to Donna Horowitz. His disappointment was clearly multifaceted. It encompassed the deep sense of betrayal inflicted upon his mother, the overarching pattern of dishonesty and manipulation consistently displayed by his father, and the relentless, ongoing destabilization of what little remained of their family unit, all of which weighed heavily and emotionally upon him, creating a breeding ground for resentment within himself. 2. A particularly disturbing and entirely unexpected financial revelation, directly involving Francine, added a concrete, compelling, and potentially sinister layer of specific motive to her involvement in Laney's complex and ultimately tragic life. I signed over $200,000 of his life insurance money to Francine. This staggering and apparently deceptively obtained transfer of a substantial sum in life insurance proceeds, a sum of $200,000, immediately positioned Francine not merely as a romantic entanglement, but as a highly significant and unwitting financial beneficiary of Lanny's premature demise, thereby providing her with a powerful and tangible material motive, the oldest motive in crime, in his death. That tells me that there's motivation there. She could have been looking at Angelet for herself. The ominous specter of potential financial greed, combined with a confirmed, albeit complicated, romantic entanglement, collectively created a potent and explosive psychological blend for a possible murder motive, drastically broadening the investigative lens to include the intertwined complexities of Laney's professional dealings, his personal life, and the potential for a third-party involvement in the crime for material gain. After meticulously absorbing the unsettling revelations of Lanny Horowitz's incredibly complex personal life, particularly his chronic, ongoing affair with his business partner, Francine, and the highly controversial life insurance policy that suddenly positioned her as a significant, unsuspecting beneficiary, detectives unequivocally understood the absolute imperative to formally and thoroughly interview Francine, the woman who now stood squarely at the very center of Lanny's extramarital storm and emotional entanglement. Their underlying investigative philosophy was to approach her without deeply ingrained preconceived notions or overt suspicion, meticulously allowing her to articulate her own comprehensive version of events and her relationship with Lanny, without leading or accusatory questions. After learning of Lanny Horowitz's possible affair, detectives need to have conversations with the women in his life. Our goal was, if one of them would agree to talk to us, we would let them tell us what happened. This seemingly neutral and non-confrontational approach was strategically designed to encourage voluntary transparency, foster trust, and elicit maximum, uncoerced disclosure. Donna Horowitz, however, consistent with her earlier demeanor of withdrawal and silence, maintained her steadfast refusal to engage directly with law enforcement. Swiftly and immediately securing legal counsel as soon as possible after the traumatic incident, Donna Horowitz got an attorney right away, and we were informed by the attorney that she would not be speaking with us. This swift legal maneuver, while unequivocally within her constitutional rights as a potential suspect, was nevertheless a highly significant factor for the astute investigators. From a seasoned criminal psychology perspective, while genuine shock and profound trauma can indeed compel profound silence and an overwhelming desire for legal protection, a categorical and unwavering refusal to speak to authorities, especially in a case involving the brutal murder of one's spouse, and without the immediate presence of legal counsel, often subtly yet distinctly raises heightened suspicion, amplifies a detective's focus, and can be interpreted as a potential indicator of a deeper need for active legal protection or the careful concealment of deeply incriminating information. Fortunately, Radley's prior, extensive interview had inadvertently provided key and highly practical information regarding Francine's precise whereabouts, specifically her close geographical proximity to the Horowitz residence, making a rapid and direct contact possible. Thankfully, Radley knows where they can find Francine. Francine lived right down the street, so she was in the same development. This extremely close geographical proximity immediately made an urgent visit feasible and strategically significant for the investigative timeline. Detectives, wasting no precious time, promptly paid Francine a formal visit, bearing the somber and deeply unsettling news of Lanny's brutal murder. Her initial reaction, carefully and clinically observed by the detectives, was visibly distraught and profoundly emotionally upset, presenting a compelling facade of profound shock and grief. Detectives pay her a visit and deliver news of Lanny's murder. She was very distraught, very emotionally upset, almost in shock. The investigators' cautious, sensitive, and professionally empathetic approach in delivering the devastating news was evident in their measured and empathetic introduction, precisely designed to minimize further distress while carefully laying the groundwork for a calm, yet probing, series of questions. Obviously, we've just explained to you that Lanny, who, has been found there. Okay. How old are you born? Well, we'll explain all that to you, but we'd like to ask you a few questions first. Francine's immediate account of her specific plans with Lanny, delivered even in her apparent state of distress, immediately and powerfully pointed to the deeply intimate and personal nature of their relationship, overtly reinforcing Radley's earlier suspicions about his father's persistent and clandestine infidelity. Francine says she and Lanny were supposed to be leaving that morning on a business trip to North Carolina. They did plan this whole entire week of such fun to go for again. The specific phrasing, a whole entire week of such fun, used by Francine to describe their intended trip, clearly and definitively transcended the bounds of mere professional engagements, strongly implying a romantic getaway or an extended personal rendezvous rather than a strict, dispassionate business venture. To the experienced and discerning investigator, this almost casual, yet highly specific, conversational detail definitively confirmed the deeply rooted and ongoing nature of the illicit affair. Francine freely and openly expressed her deep emotional connection to Lanny, unequivocally portraying him as an important and cherished figure in her life. To investigators, it sounds like more than just business, which seems to confirm Radley's suspicions. She found him to be very near and dear to her heart. However, she quickly and meticulously qualified the reported depth of Lanny's emotional investment in their relationship, carefully acknowledging his reportedly stronger emotional commitment and intensity compared to her own feelings, perhaps hinting at a power imbalance within their illicit relationship or a genuine reluctance on her part to fully commit to him. She indicated, though, that Mr. Horowitz had deeper feelings for her than she was ready for at that time. She openly and candidly admitted that Lanny, propelled by his evidently stronger and more intense feelings, had gone so far as to formally propose marriage, an offer she had, crucially, definitively declined. She admitted that Mr. Horowitz had asked her to marry him, but she had declined that offer because, as she explained it, she was recently divorced and wasn't ready to move on. This carefully articulated explanation, portraying her as emotionally cautious, still recovering from a prior marital perhaps deliberately, maintaining an emotional distance from the intense emotional and profound financial entanglement Lanny seemingly harbored for her, presented a nuanced psychological presentation that was carefully noted and considered by the investigators. When directly confronted by detectives with the unsettling revelation of the $200,000 life insurance policy, Francine's response was notably dismissive, bordering on and quite possibly strategically performative, designed to deflect suspicion and minimize the implication of financial motive. When they asked Francine about the life insurance policy, she says she didn't expect anything from Lanny. She said to me, "Francine took care of your ex's wife." I said, "I'm not going to laugh. Is there going to be a penny?" Joking, always joking. This performance of detached amusement, peppered with self-deprecating humor, and an air of feigned nonchalance in the face of a substantial financial windfall, while conceivably a genuine attempt to diffuse tension or simply mask true, complex emotions, would have been meticulously noted and carefully analyzed by seasoned criminal psychologists. Such an incongruent response, appearing to mock or trivialize the gravity of a significant life insurance policy payout and the serious implications of the situation, often subtly yet distinctly signals a degree of calculated composure, a psychological defense mechanism, or even an underlying deception that rigorously warranted further, deeper scrutiny. It was a verbal dance around the truth. Regarding her precise movements and whereabouts on the morning of the murder, Francine provided a seemingly clear, coherent, and, critically, readily verifiable alibi, which was essential for definitively establishing her known involvement in the physical act itself. Police did ask Francine where she had been around 7 a.m. She was able to fairly readily prove to them that she'd gotten up and was packing and getting ready to pick him up at 8. Her consistent and verifiable account of her activities during the critical time window of the shooting, coupled with her apparent and overt distress over Lanny's death, collectively convinced investigators of her non-involvement as the direct physical perpetrator, the one who pulled the trigger. Clearly, she was very distraught about what had happened to him, and, they were confident that Francine didn't have anything to do with this. Her visible emotional reaction, perceived as genuine and authentic grief, combined with her demonstrably truthful alibi, effectively moved her out of the immediate circle of direct suspicion for Lanny's physical death, at least in the primary role of the shooter. This narrowed the focus of the investigation considerably. However, Francine's profound utility to the painstaking murder investigation extended far beyond merely clearing her own name of direct physical involvement. She provided absolutely crucial, deeply incriminating, and context-rich information that dramatically refocused and significantly sharpened the entire inquiry, turning it definitively towards another key individual intimately connected to Lanny. According to Francine, investigators should be looking at Lanny's wife, Donna Horowitz. This was a significant and strategically delivered redirection of focus, based on her personal experience and Lanny's confided fears. Francine then proceeded to paint a vivid and disturbingly detailed picture of the tumultuous, chronically unstable, and ultimately volatile Horowitz marriage, one that had been plagued by years of chronic instability and repeated ruptures. Francine just told police that Donna Horowitz and Lanny Horowitz had been married, divorced, married, divorced. This highly unstable and repetitive pattern of repeatedly dissolving and then rebuilding their union, a cycle of separation and reconciliation, volumes about a fundamentally emotionally draining and chronically conflict-ridden relationship, hinting at deeper There was discontent and arguments, and a volatile kind of relationship. This constant state of simmering conflict, frequently erupting into bitter arguments, painful betrayals, and deeply wounding exchanges, had, over many years, created a fertile and dangerously explosive ground for intense resentment, profound anger, and eventually, murderous fury to develop and fester, poisoning the very foundation of their bond. Francine further revealed Lanny's most recent, desperate, and ultimately fatal attempt to definitively sever ties with Donna, signaling his absolute and irrevocable resolve. Francine tells investigators Lanny recently hit a breaking point and asked Donna to move out. This decisive and brutal act of explicit expulsion, intended to physically and permanently remove Donna from their shared home and their shared life, was undoubtedly a catastrophic psychological blow to Donna's already fragile self-perception and her fervent, almost obsessive, desire for a unified, idyllic family unit. Perhaps most chillingly and prophetically, Francine imparted Lani's explicitly stated and deeply personal fear of Donna, adding a sinister and profoundly disturbing dimension to their deeply troubled relationship. Francine told police that Lani Horowitz had confided in her that he was afraid of Donna. According to Francine, she had said to Lani, "Horowitz, you need to hide your gun." This stark, unambiguous, and profoundly cautionary warning from Francine to Lani, specifically advising him to conceal his extensive collection of firearms, due to a genuine and expressed fear of his own wife, powerfully painted Donna not merely as an emotionally wounded individual, but as a potentially dangerous, unpredictable, and ultimately lethal threat, perceived as such by the victim himself. Such an explicit statement, directly from an outside party, reflecting the victim's own profound, articulated fear for his safety against his spouse, carried immense and highly incriminating weight for the investigators, profoundly shifting the psychological dynamic from one of victim blaming to one of potential threat assessment. It powerfully positioned Donna not as a grieving widow, but as a credible and explicit danger, perceived as a present threat by those closest to the victim, thereby providing a clear psychological underpinning for violence. When subsequently queried about Radley Horowitz, Francine's response, carefully articulated and nuanced, further intertwined the mother and son's potential motives and behaviors, hinting at a complex and potentially destructive interpersonal dynamic within the entire family unit. When they ask her about Radley Horowitz, she has a similar response. The implied link between mother and son's capacity for volatile behavior and potential aggression further complicated the psychological profile of the family and deepened the web of internal secrets and resentments. Based on Francine's pivotal, profound, and profoundly revealing interview, both Donna and Radley, as the sole surviving adult occupants of the residence at the time of the murder, abruptly and with undeniable clarity re-emerged as the strongest, most compelling primary suspects, their individual and intertwined motives now chillingly outlined with stark and undeniable clarity. The complex intersection of Lani's chronic marital turmoil, his manipulative financial maneuverings, and his explicit, confided fear of his wife, coupled with Radley's deep-seated grievances, stemming from his past legal troubles and his father's perceived betrayal regarding those troubles, collectively formed a powerful and disturbing constellation of compelling reasons for potential, and ultimately, actual, violence. The much anticipated arrival of the long-awaited, scientifically detailed autopsy results from the medical examiner provided the crucial, irrefutable forensic corroboration of a deeply personal, rage-fueled, and visceral crime, powerfully consistent with what is classically defined as a crime of passion. It was concluded that there were 9 bullet wounds, including one to the mouth. The sheer numerical count of 9 distinct bullet wounds inflicted upon a single victim was undeniably significant, speaking to extreme and prolonged violence, but the singular, horrifying, and profoundly symbolic detail of the gunshot to the mouth irrevocably transformed the narrative from a generic homicide into one saturated with profound, specific emotional malice, clearly pointing to a deeply personal message from the assailant. For a seasoned criminal psychology analyst, the nature and precise location of the wound to the mouth are exceptionally telling, transcending mere physical lethality and speaking to deeper psychological currents. The last shot in the mouth is overkill. That's an emotional reaction. That's a reaction that usually comes with anger or rage. This specific injury, precisely observed and noted, is rarely, if ever, purely tactical. Instead, it carries profound symbolic weight, expressing an intense psychological message from the perpetrator. It is often interpreted as an ultimate act of silencing, of absolute contempt, of expressing a burning, almost uncontrollable desire to literally and symbolically shut someone up, someone who had perhaps inflicted deep emotional wounds with their words, their persistent lies, their perceived verbal abuse, or their calculated, repeated betrayals. It speaks not merely to a cold, calculated intent to kill, but to a deep, visceral, and unbridled rage, a desire for complete communicative annihilation. Such an act is a highly expressive and demonstrative display of intense fury, frequently characteristic of intimate partner violence where emotions have reached an explosive and utterly destructive zenith, where all forms of healthy communication have irrevocably broken down, leaving only the primal, terrifying language of violence to express profound anguish and vengeful desire. Complementing the gruesome and emotionally charged forensic findings of the autopsy, crucial technical data retrieved from the home's advanced security system further and irrefutably constrained the possibilities regarding external involvement, thereby focusing the investigation solely and unequivocally inward. So police talked to the alarm company. In this case, in looking at the display panel of the alarm, no door had been opened prior to the 911 call. This precise electronic evidence, recorded with objective technological accuracy, definitively confirmed that absolutely no one had either entered or exited the home immediately before the alarm was triggered by the shattering glass, effectively eliminating with absolute certainty the possibility of an external intruder. The logical deduction for law enforcement, now armed with a robust body of converging evidence, became absolutely unavoidable and chillingly direct. The perpetrator was, without a shadow of a doubt, one of the only two surviving adult individuals inside the house at the precise time of the murder. There were only two people that could be suspects, Donna and Radley. Either Radley did it, Donna did it, or they both did it together. The canvas of potential perpetrators, initially broad and uncertain, had inexorably narrowed to an agonizingly intimate domestic tragedy, forcing investigators to confront the terrible, uncomfortable truth that the killer resided, not outside, but within the victim's immediate family unit, the very heart of the home. The unfolding drama now moved inexorably towards the inevitable, psychologically charged phase of direct confrontation and meticulous, probing scrutiny. A confrontation that would test the very bonds of family. Coming up, detectives pit son against mother. This potent and deliberate foreshadowing hinted at the intense psychological pressure, the tactical brilliance, and the emotional toll that would be brought to bear on both individuals as seasoned investigators meticulously sought to crack the case, to break down the walls of silence, and to extract the full, unvarnished truth. However, in the immediate term, both primary suspects, despite the steadily mounting and increasingly compelling evidence, remained steadfast in their resolute denials and their carefully constructed, albeit often fragile narratives. But their suspects both refused to crack. He said, "All I can tell you is there were all the tourists in the house, and I didn't do it." Radley's persistent, slightly garbled, yet emotionally charged assertion, the evocative term, tourists likely being a subconscious emotional slip, referring to the overwhelming and alien presence of uniformed police officers, forensic teams, and emergency personnel within his once private sector. His stubborn denial of any direct physical involvement in the actual shooting, his adamant and consistent refusal, coupled with Donna's continued, legally protected, and strategically maintained silence, collectively presented a significant, profound, and complex investigative challenge: how to effectively pierce this psychological wall of obfuscation and silence, and definitively unearth the full, unvarnished, and unequivocal truth of what tragically transpired in that affluent Florida home. The path to justice often demands patience and ingenuity in the face of human resistance. 6 agonizingly long and arduous days had elapsed since the brutal and chaotic murder of Lanny Hope, and with each passing hour, the immense investigative pressure, fueled by intense public interest and the unwavering institutional need for justice, palpably intensified. The meticulously gathered statements from all involved parties, combined with a growing mountain of irrefutable forensic evidence, particularly following Francine's illuminating and context-rich interview, had firmly hardened the collective resolve of the investigative team to uncover the undeniable, complete truth, no matter how uncomfortable or deeply personal. Radley, in stark and noticeable contrast to his mother's almost impenetrable silence and legal stonewalling, consistently continued to display a notably greater degree of cooperation, perhaps genuinely driven by an intrinsic need to definitively clear his name, or motivated by an earnest, desperate desire to find some measure of closure and understanding in the wake of the devastating family tragedy that had so abruptly enveloped his life. Radley Horowitz proves to be more cooperative than his mother. His attorney arranged for him to arrive at the Jupiter Police Department for a videotaped and audiotaped interview with detectives. The formal, sterile setting of the police interrogation room, stripped bare of personal comforts, and under the unblinking, objective eye of both video and audio recording equipment underscored the absolute seriousness, the legal gravity, and the permanence of the situation, subtly yet powerfully urging precise and truthful recollection from Radley, with the full understanding that his words were being documented for posterity and potential legal use. Detectives, employing a standard but highly effective psychological tactic designed to elicit comprehensive information and identify subtle discrepancies, invited Radley to recount the morning's harrowing events in his own words, allowing for a comprehensive, free-flowing narrative that might inadvertently reveal subtle inconsistencies or previously overlooked critical details. Let's go over again. You tell us in your words what happened that morning. I just saw my mom screaming and running, in and out of the bedroom. His account, delivered with a consistent and unshakable conviction, remained largely consistent with his previous statements, vividly centered around his mother's frantic movements and distressed cries, firmly placing her as a central, agitated figure in the immediate, chaotic aftermath of the violence. Radley then added a highly specific and acoustically precise auditory detail, a sound indicative of a firearm operating beyond its immediate ammunition capacity. Radley goes on to describe hearing a clicking noise, as if a gun was running out of ammo but still being triggered. This highly specific sound, precisely consistent with the dry fire of an empty chamber in a revolver, provided strong and compelling corroboration for the later ballistics findings of multiple shots fired, indeed necessitating the use of two weapons or a frantic reload, thus powerfully aligning his narrative with the cold, hard realities of the crime scenes. Precise forensic evidence. Yet, even with this precise and evocative detail, he carefully and consistently maintained a guarded, precisely articulated lack of definitive, eyewitness knowledge regarding the immediate actions and identity of the shooter. It was because it's still under him. I don't know, so I'm not going to say I don't know. His cautious and repeated use of, I don't know, strategically and legally limited his direct observation of the shooter's specific identity, but subtly left the implications and potential conclusions hanging palpably in the interrogation room's charged atmosphere, clearly hinting at an awareness he wasn't fully articulating. Detectives, seasoned in the intricate dance of interrogation, masters of interpreting subtle psychological cues, verbal inflections, and non-verbal body language, instinctively sensed that Radley, despite his overt cooperation, might still be withholding crucial pieces of information, or actively. They pressed him gently, yet with an unwavering firmness and persistent intensity, aiming to delve deeper into any perceived omissions or lingering uncertainty. Detectives suspect Radley is holding back, so they push harder. Based on what you told us about the morning, it just seems like there's still something missing here. This deliberate phrasing, inviting him to actively fill what the detectives presented as perceived gaps in his narrative, was meticulously designed not to overtly accuse him, but rather to psychologically prompt a more complete and uninhibited disclosure, urging him to expand on details. The direct, unambiguous, and critical question eventually arrived, placing Radley squarely in the investigative crosshairs, leaving absolutely no room for equivocation or evasion. I just want to ask you, did you shoot your father? Or were you involved in any way? Absolutely not. I did not shoot my father. I was not involved in any way. I was woken up to gunfire. Radley's categorical, resolute, and emotionally charged denial remained absolute and entirely unshakable, strikingly consistent throughout all his interviews, conveying a profound and genuine conviction of his innocence. His unwavering refusal to implicate himself in the physical act of murder or any conspiratorial involvement definitively narrowed the field of primary suspects even further, making the other options increasingly clear. Radley would only ever tell us, "All I can tell you is, there were only two of us in the house, and I didn't do it." This simple, yet psychologically powerful, and legally significant assertion placed the full and undeniable weight of suspicion squarely and almost solely on the only other adult present, and fully capable of committing the crime, his mother, Donna. Despite his vehement and consistent insistence on his own innocence regarding the physical act of the shooting, Radley openly and candidly admitted that his relationship with his father had been, at times, severely fraught with tension, profound emotional complexities, and deep-seated animosity, clearly creating a fertile ground for past grievances and unspoken resentments. Despite his insistence, Radley does admit his relationship with his father was rocky at times. I remember them asking me if my dad was abusive, and I said, only mentally. I used the term needling at the time. I thought they could push your buttons. This forthright acknowledgement of his father's mental abuse and persistent needling, yet corrosive form of psychological torment and manipulation, provided a highly plausible emotional context for a deeply rooted historical resentment, a psychological vulnerability that astute investigators meticulously noted and carefully folded into their evolving profile of the complex family dynamics. The undeniable root cause of much of this deep-seated familial conflict, Radley bravely and openly revealed, stemmed directly from a past legal ordeal. A scarring and profoundly impactful chapter in his otherwise privileged life that had permanently altered his future. The source of their conflict was connected to Radley's past legal problems. My parents got me into guns when I was younger, and I really took to it. This burgeoning passion for firearms, ironically and tragically initially fostered and even actively encouraged by his very own parents, had, tragically and inadvertently, taken an unfortunate and ultimately damaging turn, leading him down a perilous and life-altering legal path. So I decided to get an FFL license, federal firearms license, and start a little gun business. However, a misguided foray into specialized, legally ambiguous firearms technology, coupled with what he profoundly perceived as his father's seemingly authoritative and legally informed advice, precipitously triggered a catastrophic legal entanglement for Radley, forever altering his life's trajectory. So we wanted to, at one point, buy us an accessory that would transform a gun that was not automatic into an automatic weapon, and didn't know if it was legal or not. I showed it to my dad, and I'm like, God, look what these guys are selling online. This thing. And he says, just Fing, order it. And he's the smart one. He's the lawyer. Radley, in a tragic act of filial trust and unquestioning deference to his father's purported legal expertise, unfortunately and irrevocably followed this ill-fated counsel, an act that would define a major part of his subsequent struggle. According to Radley, he said, I followed his advice, and I bought it. Well, of course, the ATF in short order arrested Radley for purchasing that equipment. The subsequent federal arrest, directly and explicitly linked to what he adamantly perceived as his father's negligent, and ultimately detrimental legal advice, carried devastating and indelible personal consequences for him, impacting his freedom and his future. As a result of that arrest, Radley's vehicle was confiscated, and he was sentenced to federal prison. I got 5 months down in a minimum security camp in Miami. This profoundly impactful experience in federal prison stripped him not only of his personal freedom and physical liberty, but also irrevocably of his cherished passion and his legitimate business enterprise. Because of the firearms conviction, Radley Horowitz was forbidden by law to ever possess a gun. He couldn't have his shop, and he largely blamed his father for that. The profound and permanent loss of his gun business, a core part of his identity and source of income, and his legal right to possess firearms, became a significant, tangible, and deeply personal source of unwavering grievance and bitter resentment against his father, shaping his feelings about him for years to come. That was a huge, huge part of my life that was taken from me, while consistently maintaining his resolute innocence in the actual murder. Radley's candid, albeit emotionally charged, testimony undeniably and inadvertently revealed a potent, deep-seated, and long-standing motive for profound animosity towards Lanny, providing a clear psychological underpinning for potential involvement, even if not as the direct assailant. Radley has just confirmed his own potential motive for killing Lanny. Radley was a suspect. I mean, there's no two ways about it. Again, 3 people in the home, one's dead. This stark and unambiguous truth, from the objective perspective of an experienced investigative team, was utterly inescapable and necessitated his careful, methodical inclusion in the suspect pool. Following Radley's comprehensive and meticulously documented interview, the detectives embarked upon a critical and systematic process of painstakingly his statements through precise physical verification, leaving no detail unchecked, however minor it might seem. We knew, at the conclusion of his statement, we wanted to go back to the house and see if anything was in there that was corroborative of what he was talking about. Even seemingly minor details, if verifiable, could significantly confirm or crucially deny the veracity of his narrative, acting as crucial touchstones of truth. When he told us he went to his door and could look and see into the living room from there, could he read? So we went and looked ourselves to see that. Yeah, you could see into the living room. and so it corroborated that he could see what he said he saw. This simple, yet powerful, physical verification of his vantage point lent significant and undeniable credence to Radley's spatial account of the immediate aftermath, supporting his credibility. Another seemingly innocuous detail from Radley's narrative, specifically his empathetic act of offering comfort to his distraught mother, presented an additional opportunity for further and precise corroboration, which could cement the timeline and interactions immediately following the shooting. During Radley's interview, he also said after the shooting, he brought his mother a bottle of water to calm down. Where'd the bottle of water go? This seemingly trivial yet highly specific detail became a crucial focal point for the diligent evidence technicians meticulously processing the scene. A meticulous search of the immediate crime scene, specifically the tragically intimate bathroom, unexpectedly revealed a singular, telling object. We checked in the bathroom where Lanny Horwitz lay on the ground. There was a single water bottle on the sink right above his head, so we collected that water bottle to be processed for DNA. This discovery, precisely placing a water bottle entirely consistent with Radley's statement in such alarmingly close proximity to the victim's body, added another crucial layer of verification, underscoring the accuracy of his account, and potentially placing his mother near the victim immediately after the shooting. We're basically able to corroborate just about anything and everything that Radley Horowitz told us. This systematic and successful corroboration of numerous specific details significantly strengthened the overall credibility and veracity of Radley's comprehensive account, even as his stated deep-seated resentment against his father continued to provide a powerful, pre-existing psychological motive for general animosity, rather than direct participation in the murder. However, the most decisive and ultimately exonerating piece of physical evidence regarding Radley's direct involvement in the firing of the weapons came unequivocally from the results of his gunshot residue test. The detectives got the results back from Radley's GSR test, which was negative. This forensic finding was a pivotal and unambiguous moment in the investigation, scientifically indicating that Radley had not recently discharged a firearm or been in extremely close proximity to one that had, thereby significantly undermining and practically eliminating the possibility of his direct physical involvement as the person who fired the fatal shots. This objective scientific evidence provided a clear counterpoint to the circumstantial emotional motive. The stark contrast with his mother's actions was profound and telling. They didn't do it on my mom because she asked for a lawyer first. Donna's immediate and strategic invocation of a constitutional right to legal counsel, while perfectly legal and within her rights, provided no such direct exonerating evidence, and further amplified the investigative focus squarely upon her, leaving her open to deeper, more critical scrutiny due to her silence. The cumulative weight of Radley's definitively negative GSR test results, combined with Donna's consistent and unwavering refusal to cooperate with law enforcement without legal representation, coupled with the existing body of compelling circumstantial evidence, converged into an undeniable and clear conclusion for the seasoned investigators, marking a profound turning point. Those results and Donna's continued refusal to speak with them lead investigators to one conclusion: if Radley didn't hurt his dad, it started to paint a pretty clear picture and corroborate what we had sort of suspected to begin with. It actually was Donna, and we need to prove it. The psychological analysis and the intricate web of forensic and testimonial evidence had now unequivocally tightened the circle of suspicion around Donna Horwitz. She had, in the discerning eyes of law enforcement, transformed from a grief-stricken wife into the undisputed prime suspect in her husband's brutal murder. However, given her steadfast and legally protected refusal to speak to authorities or offer any statement, the detectives were faced with the arduous and intricate task of unearthing undeniable, irrefutable proof through alternative means, operating effectively without the crucial benefit of a direct confession from the suspected perpetrator. Their relentless, methodical, and profoundly patient investigative efforts eventually bore dramatic fruit in a profoundly revealing and ultimately incriminating discovery, one that would unlock the very psychological core and hidden motivations of the entire tragedy. While an exhaustive and meticulous search of the entire Horowitz residence was diligently underway, meticulously aiming to collect and precisely process any and all potential physical evidence that could link a perpetrator to the crime, a truly significant and utterly unexpected breakthrough occurred, dramatically and decisively turning the entire direction of the investigation. While I was processing the water bottle for DNA, detectives found Donna's journal. This unassuming notebook, hidden amidst the intimate personal effects within Donna's private sanctum, a place she believed was secure from prying eyes, was destined, unbeknownst to her, to become the single most incriminating, psychologically revealing, and ultimately damning piece of evidence in the entire intricate case. In her walk-in closet were lingerie drawers, and small item drawers like that. And in one of those drawers was the book. It was an actual diary that dated back for quite a little bit. The discovery of this deeply personal and highly confidential document, secreted away in a place of utmost intimacy and privacy within her private walk-in closet, eloquently hinted at its profound potential to unlock the profound secrets of Donna's innermost psyche and the hidden, tumultuous currents of her deteriorating life and deeply troubled marriage. It promised an unfiltered, unadulterated glimpse into her final, agonizing days leading up to the murder, revealing a narrative she had carefully kept private. Donna's journal, upon careful and systematic perusal by the investigative team, swiftly and definitively began to unravel the carefully constructed illusion of the Horowitzes' untroubled lifestyle, meticulously revealing a painful and utterly unsustainable financial reality that had long been meticulously concealed beneath a polished, perfect public exterior. Donna's diary reveals the Horowitzes' lavish lifestyle to be nothing but a mirage. Lanny Horowitz was upside down on the house. He was in dire need of money. This stark, unexpected financial distress, meticulously hidden beneath an extravagant public exterior, painted a compelling portrait of a couple living significantly and dangerously beyond their true mean, thereby creating a potent and profoundly corrosive layer of practical tension and deep-seated anxiety that significantly exacerbated their already tumultuous and emotionally fraught personnel landscape. The most recent entries within the journal, however, intensely and poignantly chronicled Donna's increasingly desperate and often psychologically painful attempts to mend her profoundly fractured, infidelity-ridden marriage. The most recent entries are about Donna's attempts to put her troubled marriage back together. Beginning in January of 2011, the entries are just about daily, and they're very lengthy and very detailed. The sheer volume, the relentless frequency, and the obsessive granularity of these daily entries profoundly underscored her unwavering emotional investment, her almost pathological hope for reconciliation, and her deep, unfulfilled longing for familial unity, a desperate grasping for a happiness that was slipping away. The diary was really black and white evidence in Donna's own words. You'd really see the inner workings of her thoughts about this. Was the script that she had set in her mind for a happy life for both herself and Lanny? For a criminal psychology analyst, this journal was an utterly priceless artifact, offering an unparalleled, unadulterated, and profoundly intimate window into Donna's innermost psyche, which to follow and adhere to, despite overwhelming contrary evidence. The diary meticulously depicted a woman, Donna, driven by an almost pathological and all-consuming yearning for a unified, perfect family unit, but tragically and progressively losing her firm grasp on objective reality, becoming inexorably entrapped within the labyrinthine, distorting confines of her own tortured and increasingly desperate mind. It depicted a woman in Donna who desperately wants a family, but then we see her getting lost in her own self, her own mind. The journal, in chilling detail, meticulously documented the slow, agonizing erosion of her idealized life and her perceived marital bliss, revealing the gradual intrusion of painful realities. The diary starts to, he doesn't come home again, he's with Francine, he's this. These fragmented, emotionally charged sentences mark the brutal and incessant intrusion of cold, hard reality, the persistent infidelity and emotional neglect into her carefully constructed fantasies. The undeniable truth of Lanny's pervasive, chronic infidelity and his consistently callous, emotionally abusive treatment of her steadily permeated the diary's pages, relentlessly shattering her cherished illusions one painful shard at a time, until nothing was left but shattered dreams. The reality of how Lanny's treating her happens. The diary precisely captured the grim beady erosion of her spirit, her self-worth, and her sanity. Detectives meticulously reconstructed the precise sequence of escalating emotional and interpersonal events that ultimately led to Donna's catastrophic psychological breakdown, painstakingly utilizing the detailed chronological timeline so candidly provided by Donna's own diary. A pivotal and ultimately fatal turning point occurred in the spring of 2011. While the couple were, at that point, legally divorced and residing separately, Lanny approached Donna with a seemingly benevolent, yet ultimately manipulative and profoundly proposition designed to exploit her deepest desires. Detectives learned that in the spring of 2011, while the couple were divorced and living apart, Lanny asked her to secure a $200,000 loan from her parents. This significant financial request, cunningly framed by Lanny as a necessary means to repair their deeply fractured relationship, was disingenuously presented as an olive branch, a genuine pathway to reconciliation and marital renewal. It was, for Donna, imbued with profound, desperate, and ultimately devastating emotional weight. He shared with her that if she could borrow this amount of money, they could move in together again. Donna believed together, if we can get this $200,000, we can get married again. We can be a family again. For Donna, this substantial sum of $200,000 was not merely a financial transaction. It was, in her heart and tortured mind, a sacred, desperate, and ultimate investment in her dearest wish, the complete and miraculous restoration of her failing marriage and the idealized rebirth of her beloved family. Her belief in this potential outcome was fervent, her hope profound, and her desperation immense, rendering her vulnerable to manipulation. However, after Donna, through what must have been an enormous amount of emotional and psychological maneuvering, potentially incurring significant emotional debt and distress from her trusting parents, successfully and painfully obtained the $200,000. She was abruptly and cruelly confronted with a brutal and utterly shattering realization that her hope was unfounded. Laney's proclaimed commitment to saving their marriage was nothing more than a deceptive ploy. His true allegiance, as always, lay solely with himself and his mistress. But after Donna gets that money from her parents, she discovers Lanny isn't as invested in saving their marriage. He would say, "I'll be home at 5 o'clock and we have dinner." And, he would share with her, "Oh, Francine, then I had to go to a business dinner. We got tied up." These casual, transparently false excuses, and consistently dismissive explanations of her expectations, delivered with a callous and cruel disregard for her feelings, were not merely instances of forgetfulness or benign scheduling conflicts, but were calculated acts of evasion and persistent deception, incessantly reinforcing his ongoing affair with Francine. Each new lie chipped away relentlessly at Donna's fragile hopes, deepening her pain and humiliation. The ultimate indignity, starkly revealing his profound disregard and utter contempt, came chillingly to light on her very own birthday. Dramatically juxtaposed with Laney's lavish lifestyle and emotional investment with his mistress. She'd written in there about, "It was my birthday and we had hot dogs for the girl, but he took her 3 forks on her birthday, which is a very nice steakhouse." This painful, deeply personal comparison, her meager and solitary celebration contrasted with his lavish, romanticized dinner with Francine vividly underscored the profound depth of Lanny's calculated betrayal and Donna's crushing, escalating humiliation, all painstakingly recorded in the raw, unedited honesty of her private journal, a chronicle of her torment. The most devastating blow, the final, crushing psychological assault that definitively severed the very last fragile thread of Donna's hope and irrevocably propelled her into an abyss of irreversible despair and rage, came in the form of Lanny's explicit and brutally candid declaration, a statement of ultimate emotional cruelty and cold calculation. According to her diary, Lanny told her, "If I had known that Francine felt about me the way that I do now, I would never have asked you to move back in the house." This raw, unvarnished, and utterly unsympathetic confession was an act of extreme psychological cruelty, meticulously designed to cause maximum pain and leave no room for doubt, completely dismantling Donna's deeply cherished illusion that the $200,000 loan, painfully extorted from her trusting parents, was a genuine investment in their future together. Instead, it was exposed as merely a cynical and manipulative means to an end for Lanny, a financial convenience obtained through cold, calculated emotional manipulation and flagrantly false promises, ultimately serving his own selfish desires. I think that was the turning point. This specific entry in her diary marked the point of no return, the moment her internal world shattered beyond repair. Following this catastrophic and psychologically traumatizing revelation, Donna's diary entries, once filled with tentative hope and desperate yearning for reconciliation, abruptly plunged into an escalating, suffocating darkness, marking her irreversible descent into profound mental anguish, fury, and ultimate despair. With this brutal and unequivocal truth finally laid bare, exposed in its full, agonizing clarity, Donna's full and undeniable awareness of her complete exploitation, her profound betrayal, and her utter humiliation became shockingly, unforgettably clear, effectively shattering her very last fragile illusions beyond any hope of repair. After that, her diary entries take a darker turn. Donna becomes more and more aware of all the pieces of the puzzle that spelled a different reality than the one that she's forecasted for herself and her family. The psychological defense mechanisms of denial, wishful thinking, and active which had for so long heroically sustained her through years of turmoil and infidelity, finally and irrevocably crumbled into emotional dust, leaving her exposed and vulnerable. Donna couldn't even lie to herself anymore. She knew she got taken, and here she had gotten $200,000 from her mom, and what a fool she must have felt like. The profound, suffocating shame of having unwittingly deceived her trusting parents, combined with the crushing humiliation of being so utterly and publicly manipulated by the man she deeply loved and desperately wanted a family with, fueled a dangerously potent cocktail of despair, self-loathing, and burgeoning, uncontrollable rage. The meticulous psychological trajectory so candidly documented in her journal was chillingly clear and unambiguous, meticulously tracing her internal journey from hopeful anticipation to seething, murderous fury, revealing the genesis of her lethal intent. You see Donna's words getting worse and worse and worse and rising in intensity. Through the diary to the explosion, that is the homicide. The diary entries, once frequent, detailed, and emotionally expressive, became noticeably fewer and further between, as the emotional storm within her gathered its terrible strength, until they ceased altogether, a terrifying and absolute silence before their cataclysmic, violent storm. The last entry prior to the shooting, I think, was a week or two earlier, which was totally also telling because it'd been every day and then it got fewer and fewer. And then just before the killing, there's nothing. This chilling cessation of self-documentation represented the final internal capitulation, the critical point at which overwhelming emotional pain and unbearable humiliation gave way to a cold, unwavering, and violent resolve, silencing her own inner voice before she moved to silence another's. My father pushed her and pushed her and pushed her, and she snapped. This succinct yet powerfully evocative statement, offered by Radley, encapsulated the profound and protracted psychological torment and relentless provocation that cumulatively, over years of